Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tiltmoney. You'll notice we are missing one of us tonight. Kendall's having some internet issues, so once he gets that settled, he will be joining in with us this evening. But before we get started, this is the Air Raid Hour presented by the Cover One Sports Network and Picasso's Pizza, the flagship sponsor of this program. Head on over to picassospizza.net. They got 4 great Western New York locations: Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, Blaisdell. You don't even have to pick up the phone anymore. Just head on over to picassospizza.net. You can order it for pickup or delivery if you are in the Buffalo area. If you are not in the Buffalo area, that's okay. They got you covered as well. Again, just head right on over to picassospizza.net. You can get frozen pizzas delivered right to your door anywhere in the continental United States. So Picasso's Pizza got you covered, just like the Air Raid Hour has you covered here. They are the flagship sponsor of this show. So thank you to them, and go check out picassospizza.net if you're feeling hungry. All right. So Dave, to get started today, I was planning on like a couple of like buy or sells, like gun to your head type of games, like, just to sort of get the ball rolling, to get the show started before we hopped into our main subject tonight, which is going to be breaking down all of the day 2 options for the Buffalo Bills in the second and the third round. But hey, Brandon Beane threw us a nice little gift this morning when he signed Devin Quessenberry to a 1-year deal. David Quessenberry started every game at right tackle for the Titans last year. So he was Roger Saffold's teammate. 421 snaps at left tackle the season previous. Even though he's listed on a lot of websites as a guard, he's never actually played guard in the National Football League. He's mostly been a tackle for the Tennessee Titans. So some solid swing tackle depth. The position I always talk about as one of the most concerning to me, with just Tommy Doyle, and now Tommy Doyle and Bobby Hart. Now we have a third in that mix. Hopefully he's just a rung above Bobby Hart on that depth chart. He's got experience in a zone blocking scheme. That's something that Cromer likes to draw up. Cancer survivor. So he's just an absolute great story. He had to actually leave football for a little bit after being drafted to go and fight a battle with cancer. He won, and now he is a Buffalo Bill. What are your thoughts on the signing?
I will say this. I think Greg Tomset from Cover One summed it up best on Twitter today when he said, we're talking about the draft right now, right? And so a lot of people see this signing and they're like, oh, does this mean that an offensive lineman is out of the question for, A, B, and C spot in the draft? And I think the way Greg put it was really poignant, and I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said, just because we sign a player, it doesn't mean that this precludes us from taking a player at that position in the draft at a certain point, even early. And the other point about it is it's like it's a depth piece, right? We as Bills fans tend to look, and we're all guilty of it, right? We did it with Forrest Lamp last year as well. Like, we sign a guy, we're like, okay, we immediately go to the thought of like, well, how does this guy fit on the 53, or how does this guy fit in the potential lineup from a significant playing time standpoint? And that's where I think have like gotten better about this over the years. Is like, we see this and we recognize this is a depth signing. This is a training camp move. This is competition for training camp. This doesn't stop the Bills from drafting a lineman, whether it's tackle or guard. I don't really care. At some point in the draft, even early, it doesn't stop them from that. It gives them another body at tackle. It was 2 weeks ago before we signed Bobby Hart, we literally had Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, and Tommy Doyle were the only tackles on the roster.
And you had even Cody Ford is right tackle.
Exactly. And you had even made the point, like, we need at least 5 to 6 guys bodies just to have in camp, right? To do a three group rotation. So that's all this is, I think. And it is a nice veteran who's had experience. So I'm not reading into it too much.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. This in no way, shape, or form affects the the draft process or who we take in the draft. I don't think Brandon Beane will think twice if there is an offensive guard or a tackle guard flex type of player, that's best player available for the Bills at any point in the draft. Some of these guys, like we had this conversation. Maybe the one thing it could take away in this draft is how many conversations have we had about Obina Eze, right? Or have we had
Right.
about some
True.
of these late round tackles? Maybe
True.
the Buffalo Bills look to fill roster spots elsewhere and wait till the UDFA period to try to add a tackle. But at the end of the day, I don't even think this would stop the Buffalo Bills from taking a tackle, even in the later rounds, a flyer tackle, if the Buffalo Bills felt like that tackle was hands and above better than any other player on the board. But that's the only way I can see it really affecting the draft room, which is a good thing because we are 7 days away, ladies and gentlemen,
Mm-hmm.
from the NFL draft. I'm going to put up a graphic here real quick. Cover One absolutely has you covered starting next week, Thursday, April 28th. We will be hosting, the Air Raid Hour will be hosting and facilitating night one of the draft here at Cover One. We will be live from pick number 1 to pick number 32. We'll cover the whole draft, but you know that this show is going to have a Bills specific flair to it. So we will be covering night one of the draft. We will have Anthony Prohaska. Kendall's internet will hopefully be working by then. We will have Anthony Romeo and Eric Turner, Greg Tomset, and Aaron Quinn will be chiming in live from Vegas. On Friday, Anthony Prohaska will be facilitating the coverage, and I believe you, me, Kendall, and Anthony Romeo will also be joining him on Friday evening as well. And then Saturday, Anthony Romeo and Kevin Masseri have you covered. And I believe, Dave, you'll be there for a little while as well. So Cover One is going to have you covered for the NFL draft this year. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. Are you ready for next Thursday? You got the bathroom bucket or the diaper? You got like the cooler ready yet? How are you preparing for this?
Well, I'll say this. For those of you who watched us
Mm-hmm.
last year, especially for me, like I was on the whole time, day one, day two, day three. I don't think I got up, man. I was Mel Kiper last year, so I was able to power through. I mean, look, I will probably take breaks here and there. We have to remember last year was only a couple of us, but now we've got a
Mm-hmm.
whole crew. We've got plenty of coverage, so I'll be able to get my bathroom breaks in. I'm not too worried about it this year.
Yeah, Josh Clark chimes in and says Tilt's back is sore from carrying the draft coverage last year. So Josh certainly appreciates it. All right. So today's topic is this because it doesn't look like we're going to be getting Kendall anytime soon. So we're just going to jump right in. Evaluating the day 2 options for the Buffalo Bills. So the Buffalo Bills hold the 57th and I believe the 89th pick in the 3rd round. I should probably have double checked that before we started.
89. Yeah.
So the Buffalo Bills hold a 1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round pick. The picks in the 2nd and the 3rd round are at the tail end of the 2nd and the 3rd round. So that's something that's going to need to be considered this evening as well. One of the things as I was setting my board, I'm just like, how many of these guys are going to be available at 57? And how many guys that we consider finger quotes 3rd rounders might the Buffalo Bills have to be considering at the tail end of the 2nd round, just the way the board might fall. But in looking at day 2, Brandon Beane said it. The strength of this draft is between picks 15 and he said somewhere about the 4th, 5th round. He said that's where the real strength of this draft is. There's not much of a difference between the way that they have guys graded in that range.
Right.
Knowing that, do you think you see the Buffalo Bills trade up from pick 25? Or could we see a Brandon Beane 1st round trade back to try to collect more picks? Because we got 3 picks in the top 100 right now. Maybe he tries to collect 4 picks in the top 100. Maybe he tries to get 5 picks in the top, 150 picks. What do you think about Brandon Beane possibly trading back? Do you think there's more of a chance we do that than we trade up?
Well, history would suggest no, but his
Mm-hmm.
comments would suggest yes, right? I mean, if you look at what Brandon Beane's done in the past, especially when it comes to 1st round, right? He's either stood pat or
Mm-hmm.
he's traded up, right? We know he traded up for Josh, um, and we know the situation with Edmonds as well, right? So and we've traded up in the 3rd round to get guys like Dawson Knox. We've traded up to get guys
Mm-hmm.
like Cody Ford. Last year we did trade down, right? We picked up those extra 6th rounders, but that was late, right? That was day 3. So and John's right. It depends who is there. Bean history would show with the Bills that he is not the type to trade out of his first round pick, right? Trade down. Now he traded a first round pick for Stephon Diggs. That's different.
Mhm.
But to trade down, that's not really been his MO. He wasn't afraid to sit there and take Gregory Rousseau at pick 30 last year when it's likely, and I'm not saying guaranteed, but there's a
Mhm.
good chance we could have moved down a few spots and probably still taken Gregory Rousseau. Now we know there was a quick run on defensive ends right after the Bills pick with Joe Tryon and
Yeah.
others, but the fact is that history would show that he won't trade down. However, his comments and about the middle rounds of this draft lead you to
Mhm.
believe that it's not an impossibility, right? And I think each draft year is different. We have to think about the player pool differently this year than we did last year, especially with the COVID
Mhm.
returns, right? The draft class is deeper this year, so you are going to probably get a little more bang for your buck in those middle rounds this year. And if he's looking at that from a standpoint of I can get 3-4 guys that can contribute to this team this year and beyond early, then he might be willing
Yeah.
to trade down, especially if he's got guys rated about equally.
Yeah. And Demario Simmons comes in and says, why move down for players that only get snatched off the practice squad? I don't think, if you're the Buffalo Bills and you trade your first round pick and you end up with a later first round pick or an
Mhm.
early second round pick and you pick up a third round pick or you pick up a fourth round pick, and all of a sudden you now have, two twos, two threes, and a four, or two twos, a three, and two fours, all those guys are making the football team. Those guys aren't getting cut.
Right.
That's when you would probably start using your fifth, your sixth, your seventh round picks as chips to move up 3 or 4 spots in each round, right? All right, in the third round, there's a guy we really like. There's another team 3 spots in front of us we think could jump us. Hey, we'll throw you a fifth round pick or a sixth round pick to move up 6 spots to jump this other team. That's when you might want to start thinking about dealing your very tail end of the draft type of picks. But in terms of trading back, you're not trading back for sixth and seventh round picks. You're trading
Right.
back for valuable picks for valuable players that are going to make this football team. And it's interesting, right? John made the great point that he thinks it depends on who's on the board. He's 100% right. Like that's 100% right, and that's 100% like common sense. I think the only way you see the Buffalo Bills trade up is if you get to like pick 20 or 21 on the board, right? Because I don't think Brandon Beane, if he does trade up, wants to trade too much of those middle round assets, because he talked about how valuable the second, the third, the fourth round pick are in this year's draft. So it's not likely that he's going to want to part with the ones that he has to move up in the first round. But if they're sitting there at like, and they have a chance to get up into like 20, 21, 22, and a player has significantly dropped like a Jameson Williams or something like that, where the Bills just look at that player and they're like, we can't pass on that. I think you 100% see the Buffalo Bills maneuver up, but I don't think you see the Bills trade up more than 4 or 5 spots, probably trying to jump the New Englands and stuff of the world to get up and grab a certain player. And you also got to think of it this way. In Brandon Beane's press conference, he said, I don't have 32 first round grades. And a lot of people were sort of taken aback by that comment, but that's a completely normal comment. Like
Yep.
there are teams, all NFL GMs typically say that every year, that they don't have 32 first round picks. They don't have 32 first round grades. So the Buffalo Bills honestly could be taking a guy with a second round grade. They probably had a second round grade on Trey White. They could be taking a second round graded guy at pick number 25, whether it's, Bryce Hall or Jahan Dotson or Kyler Gordon, whoever they
Right.
take there at 25. If they stay at 25, they probably had a second round grade on that player, and they're taking a second round graded player at pick 25 because they were the best of what's left on the board. So if you
Well,
have all these second round grades left on the board, you might, if you're the Buffalo Bills, I think, try to trade back.
I totally agree, right? Especially because in in the perception of fans, right, in the perception of people looking at
Mhm.
that, and how many quick knee-jerk reaction grades come out immediately, right? And we always say, well, you can't grade a draft until a couple years down the road. We know that's not gonna, like, we know people put these grades out immediately, and
Mhm.
we know fans gravitate towards that and will look at it and say, like, oh, this guy gave my team an A for this grade. Like, you'll have your own opinion, sure, but like
Yeah.
that's why this is important, because in my mind, if you don't trade down and you pick a guy at 25 who's a quote second round guy, you have to think of it also from the fact of
Mhm.
you're not picking again until pick 57, right? So the question or the thing you should ask yourself is like, would that guy have been available to me at pick 57 if I were not to move up from pick 57? And if not, then I don't consider it a bad pick. That's how I would view it.
All right, let's get into running backs here to start. And I'm going to put up a graphic here that shows sort of all of the projected day 2 running backs. This is a guesstimation. I mean, this draft is going to be absolutely wild. When I was putting together these graphics and I was sort of charting who would be a second round pick, who would be a third round pick, I had to throw a bunch of wild cards into the mix, as well as guys who could possibly end up going in some of these rounds. This draft is going to be absolutely crazy from pick 10 to pick 150. It's going to be wild. There are going to be some guys with like 7th round grades going in from draft sites, going in like the 5th round, and guys with 5th round grades from draft sites going in the 3rd round. This has a chance to be an absolutely wild draft. So here is what I have as my day 2 projection board. In the 2nd round, I have 3 running backs that I think are going to go in the 2nd round. One of them we might even have to have a conversation about on Monday's show in the 1st round. That's Bryce Hall. Only takes one team to want to bite that apple for Bryce Hall to be a 1st rounder. But for now, I think it's safe to assume Bryce Hall at least goes at the top half of the 2nd round. So Bryce Hall, Kenneth Walker, Isaiah Spiller are my 2nd round projected running backs. I got those asterisks next to Bryce Hall and Kenneth Walker because I don't think they get to 57. Those are 2 players the Bills would likely have to trade up for if they want to select one of those 2 guys. Then you go and you look at the 3rd round. James Cook is another guy where he's kind of in that purgatory where if the Buffalo Bills decide he's not worthy of a 2nd rounder, he might not be there when they get to pick number 89. He seems like an early 3rd round type of pick. And then you have Rashod White from Arizona State. Our guy Eric Turner just sat down with him, did a film room feature. Check it out when you're done with this show. It's awesome. Rashod White did a private workout with Kelly Skipper, the Buffalo Bills running back coach. So the Buffalo Bills clearly have an interest in Rashod White out of Arizona State, and some wild cards, Zamir White from Georgia, a former really high recruit, big time program, tested really well after years of a couple of different ACL surgeries, and Pierre Strong Jr., the rising South Dakota State running back with some speed to kill. So these are the running backs that I sort of have charted here. I mentioned Rashod White had a private workout that involved Bills.
Brian Robinson probably needs to be on that list too.
And that's a typo. I meant to put Brian Robinson Jr. on that list. So my apologies. Thank you for that. That's 100% a typo. Brian Robinson Jr. should be on that list. The reason why I probably forgot to put him on that list is he is not one that has met with the Buffalo Bills. Bryce Hall, Isaiah Spiller, James Cook, top 30 visits. Rashod White had that private workout with the Bills running back coach. So I look at the guys who haven't gotten the love from the Buffalo Bills. And who knows? They might have gotten love. There are 14 top 30 visits that we don't know of. We don't know of any of these virtual things. There are plenty of workouts that probably don't leak. So maybe these guys are getting love, but I look at some of the guys who aren't getting love from the Buffalo Bills. It's Kenneth Walker. It's Brian Robinson Jr. It's Zamir White. Some of these maybe more power type of backs. If the Buffalo Bills take a running back early, do you think it's going to be one of these dynamic dual threat, has to be able to run some routes, catch some balls out of the backfield type of wide receiver?
I would think
type
so.
of running back, sorry.
I would think so, right? If you're drafting a guy early and you're talking like, let's say 2nd round, I think, look, the league has gone away largely from these 3 down bell cows that we've talked about this in prior shows and in prior draft coverage. There's very few of those guys in the league, right? Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, he's one of those guys. There's only a few, right? Aaron Jones, but even Aaron Jones split time with AJ Dillon last year, right? Even Zeke Elliott splits time with Tony Pollard. So a guy that's on the field as a quote 3 down back doesn't necessarily mean that guy's going to get 30 carries or 30 touches in the game. It really just means, can this guy run? Can this guy catch passes and pass protect? And I think that's what we have to think about when we start talking about, would the Bills invest draft capital in a guy in, let's say, the 2nd round? He has to be able to do all those things. I'm not necessarily saying he has to come in and tote the rock 30 times, right? I'm just saying that guy has to come in and be able to run, pass block, and do a little bit out of the backfield as a receiver. Do they have to be amazingly awesome in all 3? Not necessarily, but you'd like to see that there's been some productivity or some experience at all 3 of those stages, right? And obviously pass protection is the one that likely can be coached up the most of those three. But I'd like to see it as someone who is like a quote 3 down or can do it
Yeah.
all type running back.
And I look at it too. The guys in the second round, Bryce Hall, Kenneth Walker, Isaiah Spiller. What I prefer about them compared to James Cook and Rashod White, James Cook and Rashod White are really intriguing because of their passing down skill sets, 100%. But what I like about Spiller and Walker and Bryce Hall is one of the things that we talk about is wanting to take pressure off of Josh Allen. I can't picture 3rd and 1 handing the ball off to James Cook. I can't picture
Right.
3rd and 1 handing the ball off to Rashod White. Maybe a little bit more White than Cook. It's guys like Spiller, it's guys like Hall, it's guys like Kenneth Walker that I would feel more comfortable taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hands on 3rd and short, which is, I don't know if the Bills are going to outright ever say it, but I think that that's something the Buffalo Bills want to do, is I think they want to take a little bit of that pressure off of Josh Allen on those 3rd and short situations. In the Kansas City game, they tried taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hands on some of those 3rd and short situations, and it failed miserably. So
what kind of confidence level did you have in it though? Like that's
none.
the problem, right? You didn't have a confidence level. And is that because of the running back or the offensive line? Early in the season, we would have said it was the offensive line, but later your best option was probably to just keep the ball in Josh Allen's hands to pick up that short yardage. And we saw how it kind of backfired. But yeah, and this is why we're having this conversation about these running backs right now.
All right. So looking at this, I want to, because I feel like if I ask you, who's your favorite guy, who's your favorite value, I think I know what the answer is going to be. So you already hinted at one. So I'll let you talk about that in a second. But Isaiah Spiller is, I think, a name that neither of us are going to choose. It would be the guy that Kendall would choose if Kendall was here. Where would you feel most comfortable drafting Isaiah Spiller? What would your facial reaction be if it was at pick 57? And what would it be if it was at pick 89? Because I think that I would be completely A-okay with it at pick number 89. I think you'd see a little bit of a wince for me on draft day if we pulled the trigger on Isaiah Spiller at 57.
I think I'll try to think of it as an emoji, right? My emoji face for the pick at 57 would probably just be the one where it's like the 2 eyes and the flat line.
Yeah.
Face,
Now we're getting into the face chart, the pain chart.
The face. So it's not it's kind of neutral, but it's kind of okay. At pick 89, I mean, it would be like the mind blown emoji, right? Like I'd be thrilled because that means we've already probably taken 2 other premier positions, whether it's corner, interior offensive line, receiver. And then on top of that, you're adding Isaiah Spiller to the mix at pick 89. So I know it's only 1 round different, but it would be from more of I would go from a neutral reaction to a very, very positive reaction if it was 1 round later.
Kenneth Riggleman comes in with some really great stats on Bryce Hall. He's got the most broken tackles in college football of all the guys who are draft eligible. And he scored a touchdown in 24 straight games. I mean, this guy is just an absolute dynamic playmaker. He's a game breaker. He's a guy who can house it from anywhere on the football field. He's one of the most electrifying runners in college football. And he was just an absolute workhorse there at Iowa State. And he's only 20 years old. Guy can't even drink yet. So he's still got plenty of tread on the tires there. I would feel comfortable taking, depending on who's on the board, because I get plenty of flack for this. You see me arguing with people on Twitter all the time. They're like, you're an idiot. Depending on how the board falls, I would feel comfortable taking Bryce Hall at pick number 25. Is he my first choice? No. Would I lose my mind if they took Bryce Hall at 25? Also, no. There are some people who I think would give up their Bills fandom if the Buffalo Bills took Bryce Hall at pick number 25.
Anthony's not listening.
That's how serious they take the running back at 25 conversation. But if we get into round 2 and the Bills trade up like a 2 and a 5 or a 2 and a 4 to get back up into the first half of the second round, or gosh forbid, Bryce Hall is sitting there at 57, that's my guy. That's the guy who I think can take 3rd and 1 carries away from Josh Allen. That's a guy who, understands and has great vision running the ball to the outside. He can break those big plays. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's just a dynamic a tackle breaker and game breaker. I would absolutely love Bryce Hall anywhere between picks 25 and 57. I know some people wouldn't take him at 25, but I don't think you can question Bryce Hall, the playmaker. I think he's the best fit for this offense, personally. I think if Isaiah Spiller comes in, Isaiah Spiller is sort of like a a turbo Devin Singletary. I think he's a bit much bigger Devin Singletary with a little bit more juice. I think Bryce Hall is a much more dynamic running back than the other two. I think he brings more dimension to this offense. So I'm team Bryce Hall.
I am as well.
Of all of these guys here, and you can obviously you could be team multiple guys because
Yeah.
I think all of the guys on this list would make me happy.
I mean, Bryce Hall
Even
is
Brian
my
Robinson Jr.
RB1. He is my RB1, but I have an affinity towards some of the other guys as well, right? So
Silas, I love you, so I'm not going to lose my temper here. He says taking a running back at 25 is almost as bad as starting Bobby Hart. That's not true. Okay, he said almost. There's nothing.
When I say I'm team Bryce Hall, that doesn't mean I'm team pick him at 25 no matter what. That's not what I mean.
I will die on that hill. If the board falls a certain way, I am more than comfortable.
No, I'm comfortable
taking Bryce Hall,
sure, but it's not a Bryce Hall no matter what at 25.
Silas said Rashod White is his guy. And honestly, like all of these guys are our guys. There's not a single guy on here where I look at him, I'm like, that guy's gonna be a bust. I like all of them, including Brian Robinson Jr., the guy whose name I forgot to put on the sheet here. Brian Robinson Jr. reminds me of Fred Jackson, and it upsets me when people try to comp Isaiah Spiller to Fred Jackson, but I keep it to myself for the most part. Dave, Rashod White's your guy, and talk about where you think Rashod White's perfect sort of value is and how the Buffalo Bills can acquire him, because you comped him sort of acquiring him, or the way you'd like to acquire him, to the way the Buffalo Bills acquired Dawson Knox.
Yeah, and Aaron, Quinn, and I have been working on some graphics for players the Bills draft once they're drafted. So I'm going to give everyone a sneak peek here of kind of what it would look like. So this is what it would look like if we were drafted Rashod White. Got this little graphic here. It's pretty nice, right? Big credit to Aaron. He came up with the template, and I just threw Rashod in there. So I want to give everyone a chance to check that out. We'll be making one of those for every player the Bills draft, and we'll add the round and pick number to that as well. So just a little sneak peek for you there. But my view on Rashod White's value, I really, really like the idea of coming back up into, well, and it depends on how the board falls, right? If running backs start dipping and the likes of Bryce Hall and Kenneth Walker somehow, like, let's say the Bills pass on them at 25, they're both there, they start slipping into the second round, right? Running backs aren't getting picked. Teams are shying away. Maybe you see Bryce Hall, Kenneth Walker go in the second round. Maybe you see Isaiah Spiller slip into the early third, right? Maybe you see James Cook start to slip into the middle third. If Rashod White is sitting there in the middle to tail end of the third round, I would not mind the Bills making a Dawson Knox-esque trade up at the end of day 2 into like the late 80s, pick 90s range. They're already at pick 80, 89, right? So I wouldn't mind seeing them come back up into the 90s there at the end of round 3, getting that second, third round pick, trading up, leveraging, maybe one of their extra 6th round picks, or maybe their 5th round pick, even if they need to, and getting back up in there and snagging Rashod White there at the end of the third round if there's a willing partner. And the reason I like that is because I think the value for him is he's probably a round 3, round 4 guy, but I think if you want to get him, you're going to have to get up and take him at the end of the third, because you're not going to get him.
He's going to be he's one of those guys that comes off the board within like the first 5 picks of day 3, right? Like, and
you get the added bonus of then being able to go reset your board again before day 3 and you've had 4 picks already. So you're feeling good. You go back, you go sleep well after night 2, you reset, you figure out your board for day 3, and you have Rashod White in tow.
And Sean McDermott needs to be able to sleep well. Like, he needs something to calm him down, like a little bit of melatonin. The taking Rashod White can be the melatonin after eating all that candy because he's getting nervous. I think the sleeper here, and I don't know if he's a sleeper for the Bills, but I do think he's a sleeper in the third round. And I do think he has some of the skill sets. I don't know if the Buffalo Bills will pull a trigger on a guy like this, and he's an older prospect too, but Pierre Strong Jr. out of South Dakota State. I mean, this is a guy, top end speed. He's gonna impact your passing game, playmaking ability. Brett Coleman, a guy who I love watching him break down film and talk about football, sort of comped him to a Darren McFadden type of playmaker. So I wouldn't go as far as like calling him Darren McFadden or saying he's like the Darren McFadden type of guy who you would take in the top 57 picks. But if you're sitting there at the end of the third round, I can see a team like the Buffalo Bills pulling a trigger on those traits because that top end speed, that playmaking ability, that passing game impact. I question whether Pierre Strong could be an every down guy. I think he'd have to be part of a committee, but we do still have Devin Singletary here for one more year. It does look like maybe we might try to resurrect Zach Moss a little bit. So we do have some pieces here to put around Pierre Strong Jr. But at the end of the day, Brian Robinson Jr., James Cook, Rashod White, Isaiah Spiller, Kenneth Walker, Bryce Hall, those are the core six in my opinion. And I would even go as far as five because I don't know how much of an impact James Cook could have as like an every down runner. But those are the guys where if we walk out of here with one of those six in this draft, I feel really comfortable about this running back room going into the future, even with a guy like Devin Singletary's contract up after this year. After that, like I like Ty Chandler. Like I like a couple of these guys in the later rounds, but I don't see really any of them really impacting this football team the way those top six guys do.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think that's where you start getting into the conversation of like, you're then kind of just doing what you've done the last couple years, and you're going after guys like Devin Singletary or Zach Moss or like other guys we even talked about last year, right? Like Javian Walker, like, Hawkins. What was his name? Javian Hawkins? I can't remember his name. But anyway, that's when you start getting into those conversations with those guys where they're deficient, right? In some area or another. And they're not going to be the guy that you come in and expect to add necessarily a level of dynamic ability to the offense. They're going to end up being more of like a complementary niche type role. And I know we had high hopes for Zach Moss because we knew he had the power in college. We knew he actually was a proficient pass catcher, but that vision really just hasn't translated into the pros so far. So,
I'll tell you what, Antonio Dingo comes in here. I just want to get one because I did have Zamir White in the wild card section of a guy who could go in the top 3 rounds. I wouldn't be surprised if the Buffalo Bills didn't have Zamir White on their board at all. This is a guy, I know he ran that 4.4, but he offers you little to no, dynamicism in the passing game. I know he wasn't asked a lot to do it at Georgia because of James Cook, but when he did not look great in the passing game. This is a guy with 2 ACL injuries in his recent past. I know he ran that 4.4 at the combine. I know he's looking good. I know he had a really good college football playoff, but to me, I wouldn't be surprised if like Zamir White was one of those players where the Buffalo Bills acknowledge that he's a good football player, but they also acknowledge he's not a fit for what they want to do, and he's not even on their board. It would not shock me at all if Zamir White didn't even end up on the Buffalo Bills board. All right, moving on now to wide receiver. And looking at the wide receivers, let me know if, again, I missed anybody and had any typos. I copied this and pasted this over from my spreadsheet. Second round, I think there's a chance one of Treylon Burks or Jahan Dotson could drop. It all depends on how the other guys in front of them fall. More likely Dotson than Burks, I think, could fall into the top half of the second round, but that's the key word, top half of the second round, and we'll get to that in a second. Christian Watson, Sky Moore, George Pickens are all expected to come off the board before round 3. Maybe there's a chance a guy like George Pickens could slip into the third. Guys like Alec Pierce, Calvin Austin will probably come off the board in the third round. John Mechie, Jalen Tolbert, Khalil Shakir. Throwing some wild cards in there, Wendell Robinson, Kyle Phillips, my guy Tyquan Thornton. I think that speed is not going to be ignored. I think some teams could be ensorcelled by it. Maybe reach a little bit for Tyquan Thornton, who I love. And a guy like Bo Melton has been getting so much chatter. There's just every time I go and I type in the name Bo Melton, there's chatter. There's teams that are visiting. There's a person insider who says this, an insider who says that. Like, I think Bo Melton could be a sneaky guy who goes way higher than people think. But that's what I have here for my wide receiver projection board. You'll notice all the asterisks I have. I think if the Buffalo Bills wait to pick 57 to take a wide receiver, they could end up in sort of a wide receiver purgatory, right? Like you look at these 5 guys I have in the second round, you might have to trade up for almost all of these guys. Sky Moore, Jahan Dotson, Treylon Burks. Like if they do slip into the second, you'll have to trade up for them. They're likely not going to drop to you at 57. And if you pass on wide receiver at 57, hoping for a Calvin Austin or an Alec Pierce at 89, they might not be there either. And then maybe if you pass on a guy like John Mechie in the third, he might not be there when you get to the fourth round. So the Buffalo Bills, in terms of, I think, the fan favorite wide receivers, kind of find themselves in a little bit of wide receiver purgatory here.
And this is pretty much what you're going to have when you continuously pick late in the round, right? I mean, you're always going to get viewed as potentially reaching for a guy because it looks like, from what people are prognosticating, it should be a third round guy. Well, guess what? If you pick a guy at 57, you're basically at the beginning of the third round. So if you're the Bills and I mean, look, they took Boogie Basham last year in the second. A lot of people thought he maybe was a second, third round guy. They took him in the second, right? End of the second. So look, any of those guys you had on the third round list that you were just showing there, I wouldn't be mad if the Bills decided to go wide receiver in this draft and they took any of those guys that were on your third round list at pick 57, because in reality, that's the only real way you're going to guarantee you're going to get one of those guys. Number one, there's no guarantee that a team is going to be willing to trade with you, although the Bean has had some luck trading in the third round, so I will give him that. And you don't know how the board's going to fall. As Bean says, like, you take your guy when he's there. If you like the guy, you take him, right? And so the Bills are going to be in a very interesting situation when it comes to wide receiver, because we talk about how deep this wide receiver class is and how there's tons of guys that we like in the first couple rounds. But timing wise, is it going to line up for when the Bills are picking? If they stay at pick 57, they stay at pick 89, and what are they willing to give up if they were to pass on a guy at 57? Like, let's say that like it's Sky Moore, right, was there at pick 57.
Ooh,
Let's just
I'd be so happy.
Just theoretically, right? Like, or like even George Pickens, right? Or like someone like that. And they were like, you know what? Maybe we'll take our chances with getting a Calvin Austin later on. Like, are you willing to give up taking a George Pickens or a Sky Moore or someone like that at 57 on the hope that you can get Calvin Austin later? I would not if it was me personally. So, but I also am not necessarily, on the flip side, I'm also not necessarily saying it's a great idea to trade up for a wide receiver either, given that there are so many that look to be good options.
Yeah.
So,
And this is an absolutely wild draft, right? Like, Steve Lynn comes in and says Alec Pierce is a second round player. I wouldn't be shocked if, like, 10 picks into the second round, based off of his combine, somebody selects Alec Pierce. I wouldn't be shocked if a guy like Christian Watson or Sky Moore go in the first round and drop a guy like Treylon Burks or Sky Moore to the second round. Like, this is going to be an absolutely, crazy draft. Ronald Ringler comes in and says Moore is a slot receiver. We need more of an outside receiver. I think he's pretty versatile inside outside. Same with Jahan Dotson. Obviously, because of their size, they're going to have some issues on the boundary, but I think that those two guys are just fine as sort of that inside outside flex. I sort of have the reverse opinion of some people in the comment section. I like George Pickens and I like Christian Watson. I wonder if the Buffalo Bills, kind of like Zamir White, look at those guys and they're like, they're good prospects. We understand where they're slotted in the draft. They're just not for us. And I say that in George Pickens' case because of his versatility. Like, George Pickens is a guy who very much is going to line up and he's going to be your X receiver. You're not getting a lot of versatility. You're not getting a moving piece in a guy like George Pickens. So that, to me, is something that I think could weigh on the Buffalo Bills. And Silas comes in and says Watson at 25, problem solved. Listen, I like Christian Watson as a project, but I don't think he's the finished product to take its pick number 25. I think he's got a very limited route tree. I don't think he's a very good route runner. I worry about how easily he's tackled against such lower competition. The guys that really I'm honing in on, I would absolutely love Jahan Dotson. I would absolutely love Sky Moore. I can convince myself into Treylon Burks. And guys like Calvin Austin and John Mechie, Jalen Tolbert. I really do like some of those guys who can be had maybe in the third or the fourth, but I don't know. Who are your guys here, and where do you think like the best value is, and what spot and what player are you looking at?
To me, I feel like a nice combo of spot and player would be like if in the third round at pick 89, you could snag a guy like Khalil Shakir.
Mhm.
Like to me, that's a nice combo of getting a really good player and not having to give up draft capital, right? Because if you think
Mhm.
of guys like Mechie or Calvin Austin or Alec Pierce might go before a guy like Khalil Shakir, um, and a lot of people feel like Khalil Shakir is maybe in the same the same range as a guy
Mhm.
like Kyle Phillips, but we like Shakir a little more. Like I kind of like that value of getting
Mhm.
him there in the third round. Um, I also really don't mind taking a guy like Calvin Austin at pick 57 if all those other guys are gone, right? So
Mhm.
like if Pickens and Burks and Sky Moore are all gone at 57 and there's been a really big wide receiver run and the Bills feel like they can get Calvin Austin who can be the
Mhm.
heir apparent slot post the Jamison Crowder and he can be their kick and punt returner, then I'm kind of okay with that too. I know
Mhm.
he's really risen since like the Senior Bowl practices, right? He was like a fifth rounder on the mock draft machines. He's kind of creeped his way up into the fourth, third. Wouldn't surprise me if he went in the late second.
Mhm.
So for me, I think the combination of like a guy like Shakir in the third, where the Bills pick, and then depending on if there's a wide receiver run, would
Mhm.
not mind taking a guy like Calvin Austin at pick 57 if it came down to it.
Yeah, Steve Lynn comes in and says Watson's route tree is just like DK. Just because he wasn't asked to do it doesn't mean he can't. 100%. And maybe there are some people who believe he's more capable of doing that than me. I like the ball of clay. I just don't know if I'm willing to be the risk taker. DK Metcalf blew up the SEC. I see a guy like um, Christian Watson. He's going to South Dakota State, so the level of competition is just different. My guy here, and Dean comes in and says Jahan Dotson. I really like
I like
Jahan Dotson. I wouldn't say he's another Stephon Diggs. I would say he's probably more. I think the really good comp is Emmanuel Sanders, a young Emmanuel Sanders, one of the best route runners in this draft, some of the best hands in this draft. If the Buffalo Bills were to add a wide receiver, I think it would be, I wouldn't mind Jahan Dotson at 25. I wouldn't mind trading back into the second round for Jahan Dotson or Sky Moore, if those guys drop into that spot, or trading up into the second round and you giving up a second and a fourth to go up and get a Jahan Dotson or a Sky
I would
Moore.
not mind that either.
Yeah, none
Would
of
not
those
mind
things
that.
would bother me. If none of those things come to fruition, I think I'm with you where maybe you try to trade up in the fourth round, right? Maybe you try
Mm,
to get up into the top of maybe you try to get up to the top of day 4, right? Or I keep saying day 4 because it's fourth round. Maybe you keep trying to get up to the top of day 3. All right, we'll give you a fourth and a fifth round pick to move up to the top of the fourth round. I don't have the trade chart in front of me. Or we give you a fourth and one of our sixth to move up to the top of the fourth round. And you have a guy who maybe falls into your lap. Maybe John Mechie's there. Maybe Khalil Shakir is there. Maybe Jalen Tolbert is there. Kyle
mm.
Phillips.
Yep.
Maybe there's someone there. Speaking of someone maybe there, Wandale Robinson, and Silas Whittle comes in and says Watkins gives you kick and punt return and gadget plays as well. Yes, he does. But again, when he ran those gadget plays, he was tackled really easy. Listen, I wouldn't mind Christian Watson at any point in the draft because I trust the Bills. If Brandon Beane puts a stamp of approval on him, I put my stamp of approval on him because I trust Brandon Beane as a talent evaluator. But me as just an amateur sitting here, I just see some things that worry me about Christian Watson. But Wandale Robinson had a visit of some kind with the Buffalo Bills. He was on XM Sirius Radio with Charlie Weiss. I wanted to reach through the radio and strangle Charlie Weiss. I was having a conversation with someone, who said they wanted to reach through the radio and strangle Charlie Weiss because he asked, Wandale Robinson, who did you meet with? And his only answer was the Bills, but he didn't ask what kind of meeting. So he had contact with the Bills, but we don't know what kind of contact he had with the Bills. The Bills were the only team he mentioned when talked about teams he had spoken to. So maybe the Bills were fresh in his mind because he had just talked to them, or maybe the Bills have talked to him a ton, but Wandale Robinson out of Kentucky. And one of the things that they mentioned about Wandale mentioned was in the conversation that he was having with Charlie Weiss, he was like, yeah, I was talking with this, I was talking that, talking to Ken Dorsey, and we were talking a lot about 4 wide receiver sets. And I thought that was super interesting that he was talking about 4 wide receiver sets with Wendell Robinson, because you got OJ Howard, you got Dawson Knox, you see the Bills, bringing in Jamison Crowder, but not bringing back a guy like Emmanuel Sanders or adding another receiver yet. So you look at the Buffalo Bills and you're like, oh, a shift to 12 personnel. So I don't know. What do you think hearing that? What do you think hearing that 4 wide receiver set stuff being brought up in conversations with some of these draft prospects?
Well, part of me thinks that those would be the situations where a guy like Wendell would get on the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, part of me is like, is he only going to get on the field in a 4 wide receiver set? And that's why they're talking with him about that, right? Because if you're talking about 12 personnel, let's say, and there, you got 12 or 11 personnel and you've got your 3 wide receivers, like, he's not going to be on the field for that, right? It's going to be Jamison Crowder, it's going to be Gabriel Davis, it's going to be Stephon Diggs. So part of me leans that way, but then part of me thinks like, well, the Bills are probably feel pretty comfortable with what they can do with 2 tight ends now that they got OJ Howard in the mix. So it's, again, just a way for the Bills to remain sort of multiple on offense, right? Roll 2 tight ends, roll 4 wide receivers, whatever they choose to do. And Doug's right. Maybe Wendell will be direct competition for McKenzie as well. But my take and my reading between the lines on that is that a lot of these prospects in that Wendell range would only be getting on the field likely in 4 wide receiver sets.
Yeah, it's just super interesting because Jamison Crowder's on that 1-year deal. So the Bills could be looking for maybe just another slot receiver. I just, how we signed David Quessenberry today, that swing tackle. I need that swing wide receiver. I need that guy with some inside outside flex. One of these guys go down, Gabriel Davis or Stephon Diggs, and it's just like, I'm concerned about how the Buffalo Bills would fare at the boundary receiver. But some other guys in the mix. John Mechie had a top 30 visit that was likely to check out his ACL as he's coming off a torn ACL. They met with Treylon Burks and Jahan Dotson at the Combine. There was this report from a fantasy football guy who's verified, got a decent number of followers, that said the Bills were super into Sky Moore, but there was really nothing else corroborating that or saying he even had a meeting with the Buffalo Bills. Kelvin Austin met with the Bills at the Senior Bowl. Obviously, Wendell had that Sirius Satellite interview where he said that the Bills spoke with him. Again, there's still 14 top 30 visits that haven't been leaked. Brandon Beane said the other day they've completed all of them, and we only know of 16. There are probably dozens of virtual meetings we'll never know about. But it seems like, I don't know, could the Bills be using their top 30 visit list, all these tight ends and these safeties getting leaked, to mask interest in a wide receiver? Or do you think maybe the Buffalo Bills don't have interest in an early receiver?
Well, draft season's all about smoke screen season, right? And we know there's always the videos that come out after the draft that gives us a little clue into how Brandon Beane and how GMs are thinking. The infamous Gabriel Davis video, right, where he's like, I hope he doesn't run too fast. We didn't really know that the Bills had a ton of interest in Gabriel Davis up until we saw that video. I don't believe he had a visit with them that year, if I'm not mistaken. And I know Dean's in the chat. You probably can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he had a visit. And so I think the Bills, what we're seeing as far as visits and what we know as far as meetings, is such a small sample size of the likely touch points they've had with so many prospects, right? Like you said, virtual meetings, or they've done homework in other ways, like film and other things, right? So, and this is a good point too, top 30 visits maybe are guys with medical issues and they want to get a closer look at them, which would make sense with why they met with John Mechie, right? So that kind of would make sense.
James Mitchell too.
Yeah, James Mitchell. So I'm not going to read too much into that. They're not interested in wide receiver. It's smoke screen season, right? So like they are meeting with guys that some of this stuff's public information, but it would not surprise me if there's guys that it shouldn't surprise anyone, that guys that are drafted that we didn't see coming, right? Didn't have a visit that we knew of, all that type of thing.
Speaking of guys that we didn't see coming, we might not, as fans, because we're living in denial, see it coming. But we should be reading the tea leaves here. Looking at the tight end position, a ton of Buffalo Bills pre-draft sort of smoke around the tight end position. Isaiah Likely's had a top 30 visit. Trey McBride and Jelani Wood were each privately worked out. Charlie Kohler and Jeremy Ruckert were both talked to at the combine and spoken with virtually by the Buffalo Bills. And Cade Otton spoke to the Buffalo Bills at the combine. So a lot of smoke around some of these day two projected tight ends. Looking at my projection board here, and again, it's not an exact science. This is a little bit of my gut and a little bit of everything I'm seeing from various different websites and things I'm reading from insiders I follow on Twitter, etc. Second round, I think there's only going to be one or two tight ends that come off the board. Trey McBride would probably be the first tight end off the board, but Jelani Woods is looking to make himself some money with his pre-draft testing numbers and the number of visits he's taking. I think it's pretty clear the second tight end off the board is going to be or could be Jelani Woods. It wouldn't shock me if he upset everyone and becomes the first tight end off the board. So Trey McBride, Jelani Woods in the second round. Greg Dulcich, Cade Otton, Jeremy Ruckert, and Isaiah Likely, I think, are about third round picks. Maybe one of them slips into the second round. And then a couple of wild cards, Daniel Bellinger with those athletic testing numbers. I know a guy like Daniel Jeremiah, who's decently connected, has him in his top 5 tight ends. Charlie Kohler, I believe, is in his top 5 tight ends as well. So there are some tight ends who could go before others that could shock some people. I could see a guy like Isaiah Likely testing his way into day 3, early day 3, but day 3 at that. Some of these guys who didn't maybe have the production to match their athletic traits, guys like Jeremy Ruckert and Cade Otton, are starting to rise up some draft boards and getting a lot of pre-draft love here. So looking at this tight end position again, Trey McBride, I think, will be off the board by 57. If he's not, do the Buffalo Bills consider Trey McBride at pick number 57 if he falls? Tight end is taken or Jelani Woods gets taken. You're the Buffalo Bills. Do you consider Trey McBride?
I mean, I think you have to, right? Just based on the fact that like the talent and the possibilities that you could have, knowing OJ Howard's here for 1 year. Look, I said on the last show, I'm as big and we said this sort of behind the scenes as well after our show ended last week. Like, I'm as big of a supporter to give Dawson Knox a new contract as anyone. OJ Howard's here on a 1-year deal. If you draft Trey McBride in the second round, and we know tight end takes a little while, it's one of those things. Like, you're going to have to be patient, and you're going to have to realize that that's one of those picks similar to like a Boogie Basham maybe, or similar even maybe to a Gregory Rousseau, where you're not going to get a ton of contribution necessarily in year 1. But man, in year 2 or year 3, if you're able to get Dawson Knox that new contract and you have Trey McBride in tow as a TE2 on a rookie contract, this offense could be super multiple, right? Like, you could have the two threatening tight ends. You could have potentially, if they draft a wide receiver, you could have a like between Diggs, Davis, and another wide receiver. Like, you could have like legitimately a historic type of offense surrounding Josh Allen from a skill position standpoint. So it's not off the table, right? If the wide receiver run happens, you don't like what you're seeing there with all the wide receivers gone, and somehow a guy like Trey McBride sitting there in your face at 57, like you would get no complaints from me if that was the pick.
Yeah. We got Timothy S coming in saying Knox and Howard with Sweeney would be just fine. If anything, a late round pick for tight end, unless some crazy value a tight end falls in our laps. I mean, maybe there's just so many guys the Bills have been linked to, right? Like, maybe this is the Buffalo Bills doing all their homework in case someone falls to the third round, right? Like, there's a whole bunch of smoke now surrounding some of these other guys. Maybe a guy like Trey McBride does drop to 89. Like, crazier things have happened in this world, but the Bills are just linked to so many tight end. Like, that's the biggest position group by a mile. Like, it's not corner, it's not wide receiver, it's not linebacker, it's not safety, it's running back, and it's tight end. That seems to be the two positions the Bills have been the link to the most. And he says smoke and mirrors. If it's smoke and mirrors, it's good smoke and mirrors. I mean, Brandon Beane's got me sweating. Like, I personally wouldn't be for it, but I mean, a guy like Trey McBride, some of the best hands in the draft, reliable hands, just uber concentration and body control. He's just such a competitive blocker. He's just a guy that Rob Boris would salivate over, that Aaron Cromer would salivate over, a guy that could play off of Dawson Knox for a long time, and the Buffalo Bills could make a decent amount of have a decent amount of success in 12 personnel once OJ Howard leaves, if they can re-up Knox. So it's Elshar comes in and says another factor to consider is the red zone. Bills often move the ball down the field with ease, but struggled in the red zone. A huge tight end like Jelani Woods could really help in the end zone. So yeah, I mean, they do have OJ Howard. What was the first thing Josh Allen said when he saw OJ Howard? Well, that's a big dude. So even Josh Allen was shocked by the size of a guy like OJ Howard. Timothy S says, you don't think Trey McBride will go in the first round? I don't think any tight end goes in the first round this year. If he did, it wouldn't shock me. If there was a tight end that went in the first round, it'd be, I think, him or Jelani Woods. But I really just don't think that anyone's going to take a tight end in the first round this year. But there's some good ones. The guy that got slept on is my guy, Greg Dulcich. He's one of my favorite tight ends in this class. Even back when, I was calling him a third rounder when he was still a UDFA on the TDN simulator. And now he's up here. He's Daniel Jeremiah's number one tight end. He's talked about as a second or a third round pick. I'm a huge fan of Dulcich's game. I think just like Trey McBride, I think he's a little bit different. Like he's that willing competitive blocker coming out of that Chip Kelly system, but he's a downfield separator. So there's a little bit more like Zach Ertz to his game, than a guy like Trey McBride. So a guy like Greg Dulcich is super interesting, but at the end of the day, just looking at this graphic here, who sticks out to you as like sort of like the guy that you would like, the guy you would want?
Well, let's bring up the graphic again really quick. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I would want. I love Daniel Bellinger. I don't think I'd pick him in the third round. Charlie Kolar, I don't know that I'd pick him in the third round. So I don't know that there's, for me, I don't know that there's a combination of value in player here that I'd take on day two, unless it was somehow like Trey McBride slipping far, right? Mm-hmm. I think for me, that's where I come out. Like Greg Dulcich in round 3, I can get my head around that, right? Let's say the Bills go out and they get a corner and a wide receiver with their first 2 picks, or a corner and an interior offensive lineman with their first picks. I could wrap my head around taking a guy like Greg Dulcich in the third round. But I think where I end up on tight end is that I don't think I want a guy on day 2 or day 1 for that matter, unless Trey McBride somehow falls into your lap at pick 57. That'd probably be the only thing where I'd feel comfortable taking a tight end between day 1 and day 2.
Yeah, I'm looking at this list here, and I think the number one thing I could wrap my mind around is a trade up into early day 3. Kind of like what I mentioned earlier with the wide receivers. If they chose to go that route with tight end, hey, we're sitting here at the top of round 4 and Cade Otton is still on the board. Hey, we're sitting here at the top of round 4. Jeremy Ruckert's still on the board. Hey, we're sitting at the top of round 4. Isaiah Likely still on the board. That would be where I could sort of get in tune with a running back trading up. Or if you stay where you're at in round 4, even finger quotes, a reach for a Daniel Bellinger or a Charlie Kolar, because I do think that those guys are about 4th round picks, despite what most simulators will tell you. I think Bellinger and Kolar are 4th round picks. So I wouldn't mind them in the 4th round either. So, and hey, maybe one of them drops to the 5th round. Definitely feel more comfortable with tight ends there. But at the end of the day, I feel like I know where Brandon Beane's coming from. Tight ends are getting crazy money. Dawson Knox is a UDFA. OJ Howard's a UDFA. Tommy Sweeney and Quentin Morris are the 2 tight ends. Even Tommy Sweeney's contract's coming up too. So,
and knowing that tight end doesn't really ever produce in year 1, it's an anomaly. And you just signed OJ Howard, a veteran. You're going for a Super Bowl this year. You probably aren't going to spend a day 1 or day 2 pick on the tight end if you're the Bills.
100%. All right, let's shift our focus now to the offensive line. I sort of meshed tackle and guards together. I left some of the tackles off the board that probably wouldn't be interested in the Bills. So unless the tackle had guard flex, I really left them off this list. So we're just going to pretend like the Bills wouldn't take a tackle in the first 2 rounds, unless it's a guy like Nicholas Petit. If the Bills take a straight up tackle in the first 3 rounds, we'll have a conversation about it on draft night. I'm not going to spend precious time pre-draft talking about that. So in the second round, maybe a guy like Kenyon Green or Tyler Smith drop into the beginning of the second round. It's unlikely they would be there for the Buffalo Bills at 57. Dylan Parham is another guy Kendall doesn't even think will be there for the Bills at 57, but he's a guy who did a top 30 visit with the Buffalo Bills. Sean Ryan, another top 30 visit with the Buffalo Bills. Jamari Sawyer. These are all guys I expect to come off the board in the second round. Maybe Sawyer slips into the third, where you start to get guys like Nicholas Petit-Frere, who's got that tackle guard flex, Darian Kennard from Kentucky, Cole Strange, Zach Tom, Ed Ingram. And then you got some wild cards, some guys I think could possibly go in the third round of the draft if one team falls in love. A lot of them are centers, Alec Lindstrom, Cam Jurgens, Luke Fortner. So if a team with like a center need or a team that wants to develop a center really falls in love with one of these three, I could see them going in the third round. And obviously Justin Schaefer from Georgia, I think is having himself a pretty good pre-draft process and sort of separating himself a little bit and coming out of the shadow, the giant shadow that is Jamari Sawyer. So looking at some of the Bills pre-draft visits, clearly the Bills have interest. Dylan Parham, Sean Ryan, Nicholas Petit-Frere, all top 30 visits, as well as a meeting with Cam Jurgens at the Combine. So clearly the Buffalo Bills are sniffing around the offensive line prospects. Roger Saffold is a UFA. There's not a lot of depth. What are your thoughts? Like, does the Questenberry signing take the need away from taking a guy in the first two rounds? Does it matter who's on the board or who's not on the board? Like, who are some guys you're looking at here?
No, I don't think the Questenberry signing has any bearing on this between you and me. I mean, the Bills, I know fans, guard's not exactly like the sexiest position, right? But like, it is kind of annoying to an extent that we keep having to figure out, well, like, who's the starting left guard this year? Like every year, it seems like for the last couple of years, like, who's the starting left guard? Like, okay, it seems like we have now Rick Bates there entrenched. He's either going to, this year he's going to be starting right guard, but like beyond 2022, is he going to move back to left guard? Is he going to stay at right guard? Like, Roger Saffold's only here for 2022. So I'm definitely in the camp of like, I don't mind the Bills investing in offensive line in day one and day two. Like, I've kind of grown to accept the fact that I'll never be really ever upset if the Bills address the trenches early, right? On either side. We've seen them do that with the defensive line. We've seen them not do it so much on the offensive line in the draft anyway. Spencer Brown being a third rounder is like really outside of Cody Ford, they really haven't invested early draft capital in the offensive line. And it might be time to do that now that you have Bates in the mix. You can solidify this offensive line for years to come if you take one.
And it's crazy, right? Because like at the beginning of the offseason, Brandon Beane said the number one priority is protecting Josh Allen. And there has been very little investment thus far. Roger Saffold on a 1-year deal, Greg Manns. Then you saw David Kessenberry today bringing back Ryan Bates. Like, they've done some things, but like when Brandon Beane comes out at his postseason press conference, says our number one priority is protecting Josh Allen, and that's what you do, it sort of raises some eyebrows a little bit. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Buffalo Bills pulled the trigger on a versatile offensive lineman. That's another thing too. Aaron Cromer comes in. So maybe what Brandon Beane meant by that was we're going to fire Bobby Johnson and we're going to bring in an offensive line coach who we have more confidence in. This offensive line coach has gotten the best out of sort of bottom of the barrel, middle to late round draft picks at all of his other previous stops. So on one side, you have Brandon Beane's comments making you not surprised that they pulled the trigger early. On the other hand, you see the history of Aaron Cromer and what he's worked with and what he's had success with. And you think, oh, they can kick the can into the middle or the later rounds of the draft. But another thing Cromer likes is guys who are position versatile. Even though he wants them to play one position, he likes them to know and have experience at all the positions to make them more comfortable and more aware of the responsibilities of the other guys around them, because he thinks it makes them better football players. Guys like Jamari Sawyer have played multiple positions. Sean Ryan have played multiple positions. Kenyon Green, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Darian Kennard, Cole Strange, Zach Tom, Luke Fortner. There's a ton of guys who have moved around the line in their times in college, have experience in multiple positions, were played college at one position, are projected to play another position in the pros. So I feel like the Bills are going to pull the trigger offensive line in the first 4 rounds. Do you think that that's a real good possibility?
I do. I think the question comes down to, and I'd love to see what the comment section thinks about this. if you were going to go after someone with position flex, right? In comment section, let us know what you think too.
Mhm.
Are you going after a guard tackle, or are you going after a guard center or
Yeah.
center guard? That to
Or
me becomes, or
in the
Zach
case of
Tom, where you go left tackle center.
center. That's
So
exactly what I
yes,
was gonna
that is
say.
an odd one, I will say. But like I'm struggling with this because part of me is like, oh yeah, like I really, really like the idea of like a guard tackle flex, like a
Mhm.
Nicholas Petit Frere. But then part of me is like, man, like planning for the future, having a really solid backup center for
Mhm.
Mitch Morse in the short term, not forcing Ryan Bates to kind of have to
Yeah.
worry about that in the back of his mind. Like I kind of land on guard center, man. I'm with Andrewsy there. Guard center is kind of where I'm coming out. And like
Yeah.
that's why like Cam Jurgens is like so
Mhm.
appealing to me. Jessica says tackle guard pending of
Yeah.
Zion. Well, so Zion,
Mhm.
he's a unicorn. Like
Yeah.
give me Zion. Like I'll take him in
And
the first round.
and that's the thing too. Maybe Questenberry takes the want and the need of a tackle guard away, and more of a guard center a possibility. But I don't know. They both intrigue me. I mean, we've had conversations on the show before we signed Questenberry. It's like I'd like to see them double dip in the middle rounds and have one guard center and one tackle guard. Petit Frere, Sean Ryan, those guys are super interesting to me
Mhm.
as sort of that tackle guard flex. I just feel like they really fit the mold of what Aaron Cromer is looking for. Like I am drawn intrinsically to them, but I'm also super drawn to guys like Luke Fortner, guys like Cam Jurgens as well. So it should be super interesting.
And I
I've
would
always loved
say,
Damari Salyer, but that sort of
oh
has
yeah,
cooled down since Aaron Cromer came in.
and the fear you might have too is that if you don't go for a guard tackle,
Mhm.
then if or not Tommy, if Deion Dawkins goes down for whatever reason, you're talking about Quesenberry or Tommy Doyle coming in at that role. So like
Mhm.
that's that's in the back of my mind as well. So that's why a guy like Petit Frere
Yeah.
obviously made my no matter what list, and like I'm really high on him. I would have no concerns, really minimal concerns if you drafted a guy like that. Like if
Mhm.
something happened to Deion Dawkins, I feel like he could come in and hold down the fort for you. So
Yeah. It should
yeah,
be
it's
super interesting. This year's draft, man, like it's so deep. I mean, we've gone through, like we mentioned, the 6 running backs at the top. We mentioned a plethora of wide receivers. We mentioned a ton of tight ends. We mentioned a ton of offensive linemen here. There's not a single guy like in the projected to go in the top half of this draft where we draft him and I want to, puke in a bucket. Like there are no um there are no players. Like I'm super comfortable and confident in whoever the Buffalo Bills take. I think where you start to get uncomfortable is what positions do they take? Is it the position that you like? Is it the position that you wanted? Chewy Baca says, who is our backup center right now? It's Greg Mans, the free agent pickup from, what was he with Miami?
yeah,
With Miami Dolphins.
yeah.
I would say more likely than not, the backup center right now is Ryan Bates, and Cody Ford kicks into right guard. I think that might be I think that might be the most likely option if the season were to start tomorrow. Thankfully, it is not starting tomorrow. So let's shift now to defensive line here, and we'll make this one quick because, ironically, because the most names pop up here when we talk about defensive line. I combine defensive tackle, defensive end here. And the purpose being that we're going to rush through this is the Bills could take one, and there's a lot of players we like, and we've talked at length about it over the course of the show. But I mean, it would have to be a player that's really sticking on the board the way the Buffalo Bills invested in this position in free agency. But looking at it, they have met and had private workouts with um, Nick Bonito, D'Angelo Malone, and Perion Winfrey. They met with Joshua Pascal for 15 minutes after his pro day and talked to him at the Senior Bowl and the Combine. So there are some guys that the Bills have sniffed around, and the private workouts came after free agency. So it's not like, well, they talked to the guys at the Combine and then went ham in free agency. Some of these guys were talked about before, were talked to well after free agency. But looking at it, a guy like Perion Winfrey, if he slips into the top half of the second round, Arnold Ebiketie, Boye Mafe, top half of the second round, David Ajabo, who knows where he comes off the board with that torn Achilles. Travis Jones, Logan Hall, Joshua Pascal, DeMarvin Leal, all of them are expecting to hear, I think, their names called by the end of the second round. Then you start to get into third round guys, and they can just be picked apart wherever, depending on whatever flavor a team likes. Cameron Thomas from San Diego State, Sam Williams from Ole Miss, Nick Benito, who the Bills obviously had a private workout with, Kingsley and Agbury, Drake Jackson, Fidarian Mathis, Thomas Booker, Zachary Carter, and there's just even a ton of wild cards you could throw in there. Majai Sanders, D'Angelo Malone, Amari Barno, Matthew Butler, Otito Ogbonya, Iwumia Ozurike, and Christopher Hinton. I mean, there's a ton of talent at defensive line in this draft. I think as a fan, my hope, my dream is that all of the defensive linemen just come off the board. Boom, 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 boom. And it just drops other guys to us. Is that where your mind is at? Sort of as a fan here? Even if it means sacrificing your boy D'Angelo?
It is, right? Especially for day 2, right? And I think the reason for that is because the Bills have invested so much in recent draft capital into the defensive line between Oliver and Epinesa and Rousseau and Basham. And then on top of that, you then go to free agency. Daquan Jones signed, Tim Settle signed, and of course, Von Miller, the big signing. Like, you're talking about, like, this defensive line has pretty much been overhauled in the last 2-3 years. Guys like Mario Addison aren't here. Guys like Jerry Hughes aren't here. You've retooled that entire defensive line, and it would take something really, really, like, interesting to happen for the Bills, I think, to continue investing in this defensive line in day 1 and day 2. Ajabo, right? If for some reason he's falling into the third round, right? And maybe teams are super, like, put off by, like, whatever, his medicals or something, and he's falling into the third round, and he's in the middle of the third round, and, like, let's say somehow Ajabo makes it to 89, like, do you take him? Like, that's where you kind of start having that discussion. Travis Jones is one that was on my no matter what list, and man, he'd be tough to pass up too. Like,
and the thing is I like these guys, right? Like, if the Bills, trade back and they collect another pick and they end up in the early second round, or they trade up in the second round and they take Perion Winfrey. I like Perion Winfrey, but at the end of the day, I'm just sitting there like, bruh, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You just signed Jordan Phillips. You just signed Tim Settle. You just signed, you have Ed Oliver. What the hell? Like, I get that some of these guys aren't on the longest term of deals, but, like, for fuck's sake, you could have used some of that money on a corner then. Obviously, free agency doesn't come after the draft for that reason for free agents. But, you take a guy like Josh Pascal. I like Josh Pascal. But, bro, what are you doing taking a player that's archetype in, like, physical, testing numbers are the equivalent to a Shaq Lawson? Like, what are you doing? Now, if it's a guy like Travis Jones, okay, cool. Sit behind Daquan. You can be that big one tech. You can free things up for some of those other guys. I can get behind some of that. But, like, at this point, like, the only thing that interests me is a one tech like a Travis Jones, or two, you get to the fourth round. Hey, Nick Benito's size slipped him into the fourth round of the draft. D'Angelo Malone's size slipped him into the fourth round of the draft. Amari Barno sitting there. I can deal with that once we get out of those first 3 rounds. But in the first 3 rounds, as a fan, because as a guy who evaluates talent, I like these talents. I like them. But as a fan, I'm just sitting there like, disappointing again. Some people have brought up in the comment section trading AJ Epinesa. You think that's at all a possibility?
I mean, it's a non-zero chance, as Greg likes to say, but his what is his value, right? Yeah. Like, what are you really going to do? Like, I mean, at this point, AJ Epinesa is going to move you from, like, the fourth round to an earlier fourth round. Like, what is he, how much is he really going to move the needle in a trade? Like, some team might be interested, right? But, like, he's still more valuable to the Bills right now than he is not, right? So I just don't see it happening. I know it's been floated as an idea, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I'm with you. Chewbacca says, give me a stud Ted Washington in the middle rounds. Hey, if you could jump into the future and find one of these middle round picks, it's going to turn into a Ted Washington. Remember our boy Tyler Shelvin? How was his year?
Oh, my God. And how about this question?
He's still got time to develop, too, by the way.
from Jim, can he move us from 89 into
No,
the second? I don't think so. I
no.
definitely don't. Yeah, I don't
I don't
think
think
so.
he can either. I don't think a guy like Zach Moss can. I don't think a guy like AJ Vanessa can. I don't think he can move you up. I don't think he can move you up an entire round, even if you. Yeah, I don't think he can move you up an entire round. Maybe 5-10 spots, like if you're lucky.
Like AJ Epinesa might be the guy that if you wanted to
Mhm.
trade back up into the end of the third round, maybe that is a
Maybe you're fourth. Yeah.
possibility. Plus a pick, right? So,
Yeah. All right. So transitioning now, like I said, we're gonna make that one quick. And for us, that was quick. We're gonna transition now to linebacker. Looking at linebacker again, like this is just nuts, man. I love so many players in this draft. I would draft the shit out of every single one of these players except for Christian Harris. Looking at the second round, Nakobe Dean probably slips into the second round because of his size. Guy like Chad Muma, I think, goes at the top half of the second round. He's really rising up boards. Same with a guy like Quay Walker. Then you got Leo Chanel, Troy Anderson, Christian Harris, Darian Beavers. Then you got some wild cards who could obviously sprinkle into that third round. Guys like Brian Asamoah, Channing Tindall, Brandon Smith, JoJo Doman, and even DeMarco Jackson. The Buffalo Bills have met with some of these guys. They had a top 30 visit with Chad Muma and Brandon Smith. They did private workouts with DeMarco Jackson and Brian Asamoah. And they were at the pro day of, and were at the spoke with at the combine, Troy Anderson. This is another position where it sort of looks like purgatory to me. I'm going to put the graphic back up real quick. Walker, Muma, Dean, I think are all off the board by 57. If you then you look next to the next part of the list and you're like, oh, Troy Anderson, I like his upside, but I don't like spending a second round pick on him. Might not be there when you loop back around at 89. So this could be another one of those purgatory positions, but does drafting a linebacker early mean you have to trade Edmonds?
no, I don't think so. I mean, because there's some linebackers there with some pass rushing ability, right? Asamoah, right? There's some guy like Tindall, like there's some guys there that if you wanted to, I'll say, tweak or evolve your defense a little bit, maybe use a linebacker in a different way that you hadn't used before. AJ Klein, in the role he had, he was decent at rushing the passer. He was decent at coming out from that strong side spot and getting into the backfield. So the Bills, if they draft a linebacker, it just may mean maybe they mix up their defense a little bit more. Maybe they do play a little more 3 linebacker, or maybe they have a guy that can be a backup to either the Mike or the Will, whether it's Edmonds or Milano, and be a core special teamer, and then give them a contingency for post 22 if they don't know what they want to do with Tremaine Edmonds. So I don't think it means you have to trade Edmonds in 2022, but I do think that what helps me kind of put things into perspective a bit, especially when you start talking about day 2, is that last year the Bills drafted Boogie Basham in the second round, right? And he really didn't have much of an impact on the team in 2022. But now we're talking about 2023, and this defensive line's been revamped. And what kind of hopes do we have for him now? And I think that would be the same kind of story if you were to draft a linebacker in round 2, right? It's going to be like limited impact this year, but like it's more of a future looking pick.
Essentially, because Bills Are Electric comes in and says, would AJ Klein ever come back at a lower contract? Both AJ Klein and Darrell Williams are still sitting out there unsigned, by the way. So, we could get into June and they could be coming back here at a real discount. But I think you're spot on, because we did lose AJ Klein, and some people could look at the depth chart and they're like, well, Tyrell Dodson should slide in. Giles Harris played well when he played in Jacksonville. He can slide in. Andre Smith, the Bills trade a pick for him. He's more than just a special teamer. He can slide it. There's a lot of hope for some of these bottom of the half of the roster guys. But at the same time, you go ahead and you pull the trigger. Maybe Trey Anderson is there in the third round. You pull the trigger on Trey Anderson. Maybe you do take Chad Muma because he's sitting there for you at 57 and he plays in your base, and you groom him, you develop him, you get him more comfortable, because maybe it takes a linebacker a little bit while to get along. And then he replaces Tremaine Edmonds in 2023, and you save that $12 million on Tremaine Edmonds. You also have the chance, like you also halfway through the season, Tremaine Edmonds gets hurt. Matt Milano gets hurt. It's happened before. Do you want Tyrell Dotson in there? Do you want Joe Giles Harris in there? Do you want Andre Smith in there? No, I think I'd rather have 8 weeks in a training camp worth of practices, Chad Muma stepping in,
Yeah.
or
And AJ Klein's not here
you
anymore,
know,
right? Because he would have been that guy
because he would have been
before.
that guy. So, I think that that should be super interesting. By chance, we might need to make some side bets because I'm a little bit. I disagree with the way you're projecting linebackers. Christian Athlete is more athlete than football player. I think Muma and Anderson go before him, but we will have that conversation on Twitter by chance. We'll have. I disagree with you, but everyone is welcome to their own opinion. I think we should make a side bet by chance. I think we should make a side bet.
Yeah.
But
You
yeah.
guys should. We're gonna have
But
another golf shirt bet this year on something.
Yeah. There aren't that many linebackers that I like in the middle to late rounds. Like I like them, but they're more like weak side linebackers. Like the only true like inside linebackers, like you mentioned Mike Rose, and we talked about Randy mentioned Mike Rose, Chance Campbell, DeMarco Jackson. Like there were a few, but there's certainly not the guarantee I think that a Troy Anderson or a Quay Walker or a Chad Muma would be, or even a Leo Chenal.
There's a big drop
even though
off.
I don't think Leo Chenal is as much of a fit. Because I love DeMarco Jackson. So if we can get DeMarco Jackson in the 4th, I would prefer DeMarco Jackson in the 4th round over Troy Anderson in the 3rd or Chad Muma in the 2nd any day of the week. So that's something that's interests me. So again, as a fan, definitely don't want the Bills taking a Mike linebacker, but it could be in the cards. Who would you rather have? Chad Muma in the 2nd, Troy Anderson in the 3rd?
Troy Anderson in the 3rd. No, Chad Muma in the 2nd. I have to stick by my guy. He's on my no matter what list.
I would rather have Muma in the 2nd as well.
Yeah, Chad Muma in the 2nd.
Troy Anderson's, man, I can see Troy Anderson getting overdrafted in the 2nd round. He's getting a lot of looks. It doesn't always equate to being overdrafted, but I mean, man, his pro day was packed. No, they weren't there for anyone else. So I mean, there were a couple of other guys, but they were there for Troy Anderson, the guy who played the Taysom Hill role at Montana for a while there, Montana State there for a while. So should be interesting. All right, sliding now to cornerback as we sort of get to the end here of our breakdown. This is where it gets wild, man. Like, and we've had this conversation before. Who's even going to be there at 57? Because you obviously have your big guys in the 1st round. You have your Stingley, your Sauce, your McDuffie, your Booth. There's maybe even a chance that Booth survives to the 2nd round because of sort of his sports hernia injury. I didn't project that on this graphic. Maybe I should have. I don't think Kyler Gordon gets to the 2nd round, but also I think there are still enough people saying he's a 2nd round pick. Elam, Gordon, McCreary, there are people who would be comfortable taking them at 25. I don't know if any of these guys last to 57, but I threw them on that graphic because, again, we get into that purgatory conversation. If all of those corners, snap, come off the board, you're sitting there at 57. You're like, do I take Martin Emerson? Do I take Alontae Taylor? Damari Mathis, Cam Taylor-Britt? Those are guys you would probably rather take in the 3rd round. And if there's a huge run on corners early in the draft, you could even see some wild cards coming into play in the 3rd round. Guys like Josh Williams out of Fayetteville State, Zion McCollum out of Sam Houston, Kobe Bryant, Marcus Jones, Monteric Brown, Jalen Armour-Davis. All of these guys, I think, could go in the 3rd round, depending on how the board falls earlier and if guys are taken and how needy teams are for a cornerback. So a lot of factors in play. Obviously, not all of these guys are going to go, but any one of these names could go. If you're the Buffalo Bills, like how are you feeling right now? And I think this is one of the reasons why I think that fans are so adamant about taking a corner at 25. If you take a corner at 25, you're getting one of McDuffie, Booth, McCreary, Gordon, Elam, right? Like you're getting one of those bigger names that have all pre-draft process hovered around the 1st round conversation. And by chance says he thinks Elam could fall into the late 2nd or 3rd. It's going to be a wild draft. Maybe he could. I don't know. Wait, to me, I think if the Bills don't take a corner at 25, I'd like to see them trade up into the second for whoever's left at the top of the second round. Correct?
I agree. I mean, the first mock
Mm-hmm.
draft I released a couple of weeks ago, I had the Bills trading up into the second round, trading up from 57 to get
Mm-hmm.
McCreary, who fell in that mock draft, I think the mid 40s. And I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was a nice move for the to make. In that mock, I had him taking Zion in the first round and then trading up to get McCreary in the second. So it comes down to the value proposition the graphic you have there, because in my mind, when I look at that graphic, I'm like, McCreary in the second would be perfect. Cam Taylor-Britt in the third would be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like that to me, value. I love that. I love that value, right? And even got guys like Kendall's guy, like Martin Emerson in the third, like that. That's cool with me.
Mm-hmm.
McCreary, you know, Elam, like those are guys that if they're there at 57, you're probably taking them if you didn't take a quarter in the first round. But the question is, are they going to make it to 57? And then if they don't, like you said, are you willing to take? I'm not ready
Mm-hmm.
to say I'm willing to take Martin Emerson at pick 57, right? I'm not willing to
Yeah.
say yet I'm willing to take Cam Taylor-Britt at 57, even though I like him a
Mm-hmm.
lot. But this is why it comes back to, for me, my top two positions that I would want as a
Mm-hmm.
fan at pick 25 are corner or
Yeah.
offensive line, to be honest with you. Those are the two.
I'm team Kyler Gordon at 25. I wouldn't be surprised if he's off the board before 25. Like I'm one of those weirdos who's really buying into the Kyler Gordon stock. But if he's sitting there or Roger McCreary sitting there at the top of the second round, I like McCreary. I don't know if the Bills would like McCreary. I would trade up. Like I said, my biggest comfort level would be to get one of the top guys, either at pick 25, trading back or trading back up into the second round. But at the end of the day, I go and I look at this graphic, and Dave, you can let me know what you think here. Take those second round guys out. I'm looking at these guys
Mhm.
right here: Martin Emerson, Alontae Taylor, Damari Mathis, Cam Taylor-Britt, Kobe Bryant, Monteric Brown, and Jalen Armour Davis. I could even throw Mario Goodwich in there. So that's 8 guys. Those are 8 guys I could see the Buffalo Bills drafting in the third round and them being plug and play starters from day one. Most people, I think most teams, they wouldn't be, but I think the Buffalo Bills, they would be. You talk about the pass rush that the Buffalo Bills have added this offseason. You talk about Sean McDermott being the cornerback guru. You look at all of the defensive back talent like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer that surround that guy, and maybe even Trey White if Trey White is back. I think there are a ton of guys in the third round, and then you could double dip, and you could double dip 3-4 or 3-5 and get 2 guys to come in and compete. Brandon Beane even hit it at the double dip during his press conference at corner. I don't know, like as a fan, not maybe as a talent evaluator, because I know you like a lot of these guys, but as
Mhm.
a fan, like how are you feeling if we pass on corner the first 2 rounds?
I'm pretty much feeling like I felt last year when
Mm-hmm.
we were doing the live coverage, when sitting there and looking at Asante Samuel Jr. and Ife Melifonwu and all these guys that we just like poured our hearts out over in the draft. And then we just see the Bills take 2 defensive ends in a row. So
Mm-hmm.
last year has mentally prepared me for this year to say, look, just because it seems apparent, just because it seems on the surface that this is an obvious glaring position that the
Mm-hmm.
Bills are going to address early, it's not guaranteed. It is not guaranteed that they're going to. So while I would like them to, and I will be very happy if they do, I am kind of desensitized now to
Mm-hmm.
and kind of accepting the fact that if they don't do it, that's just going to be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the mock draft I was talking about. I'm just going to put up on the screen. This is from March 24th, so it's a little bit older. Where I had, and I'm showing this because of McCreary, I had the Bills staying put at
Mm-hmm.
25, taking Zion, and then trading up to pick 48 with Chicago to take McCreary, and then you see I have him double dipping later,
Mm-hmm.
take Monteric Brown. But to me, that is a feasibility. That is possible, right? Staying put at 25 if you don't take a corner, and then trading up into the middle of the second round to take one of
Mm-hmm.
those guys like Elam or McCreary or whoever might be left. And look who's here.
Yeah, surprise. I wanted to surprise people when you put
That
that
was
graphic up. It was about
really,
10.
really well done. Good producing stuff right there. Just sneaking it in.
Kendall, I'm gonna put you on the spot here now that your
Sure,
internet is
wildly
fixed.
unprepared.
I'm just gonna straight up put you in the pot. I want you to channel your inner Sean McDermott right now. I'm sitting in the draft room and I'm Brandon Bean, and I'm saying to you, Sean, I'm gonna pass on cornerback in round 1. I'm gonna pass on cornerback in round 2. And I'm gonna put this graphic up again. Martin Everson, Alontae Taylor, Damari Mathis, Cam Taylor, Britt, Kobe Bryant, Monteric Brown, Jalen Armour Davis, Mario Goodrich, all these guys here on the third in the wild card. I'm going to take one of these guys in the third round, Sean McDermott. Which one do you feel most confident you could turn into a day one plug and play starter? That's you, Kendall.
I know. My gut wants to say Martin Emerson, but that's me speaking. That's me.
Yeah.
Probably Damari Mathis. Probably Damari Mathis for the run stopping stuff. All the run defense stuff. I feel like he would eat that up. Just kind of how aggressive he plays and how he could McDermott probably feels that he could kind of rein that in and dial that into a point where you can fix some of that technical stuff, some of the mental stuff behind it, and then really hone in on all the athletic gifts he has with good coaching and good football intelligence ingrained into him. So Kendall's answer is Martin Emerson, but I think the McDermott answer is probably more of a Martin Emerson speaking the Pittsburgh CB.
Chris Trapasso did a mock today where the Bills took Martin Emerson at 57. I think that would
be a little rich for me. And I love Emerson.
I like Emerson too, and that's rich for me. I mean, I wouldn't mind. And the thing is, it's like I would love Martin Emerson as the Bills' cornerback selection if it came after 2 blue chippers, like right, like it makes it feel like Dave made this comment earlier, like having a couple of guys in tow makes some of these linebacker or a safety or a tight end makes it an easier pill to swallow. I think the same thing goes with cornerback. If you pass on cornerback in the first 2 rounds, but you get some blue chippers, like you get a stud wide receiver and you get a stud linebacker, a stud wide receiver, and a stud interior offensive lineman, it makes people, I think, a little bit more comfortable with a Martin Emerson. And this is another position where you could probably try to trade up, right? Like, so you take a guy in the first round, you take a guy in the second round, and then you offer your third and fourth or your third and your fifth to try to move back up into the top half of the third round and get your guy of all these other guys who are sort of left. By chance comes in with one of my favorite late rounders, so I got to throw that in there. Demarion Williams, love Demarion. So versatile. Anyway, on to safety now, and just looking at it here, a lot of really good players. Again, this is another thing where it's just a ton of players that I like. Second round, Lewis Seen, Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Petrie. It wouldn't surprise me if one of those guys goes in the first. I think all of them are early second round picks. I think it would be a shock if one of them made it to 57. I think Petrie probably has the best chance because he's an older prospect with some injury history, etc. Kirby Joseph then in the third round, Nick Cross in the third round, Brian Cook in the third round. Kirby Joseph and Nick Cross could be off. Again, it's just that purgatory, right? Where I don't know if these guys are going to be here by pick 50, by pick 57. So if we don't take one of the early third round guys, I don't know if they're going to be there by 89. So it's just so tough. I think some wild cards. I think Verone McKinley, Dane Belton, the way Unai Thomas tested, even a guy like Stephen Weatherford. I think all of them, like Tanner Muse is a third round pick. So I think a guy like Stephen Weatherford could find a fan somewhere. So it's interesting, right? Obviously the Buffalo Bills have had top 30 meetings with Lewis Seen and Nick Cross. As a fan, I don't think people want the Buffalo Bills to draft a safety, but realistically, where do we look? Where do we take the safety, right? Is it, to me, it looks like, oh, the guys we're connected to, Lewis Seen in the second round or Nick Cross in the third round. I guess I'll start there. If we were to take a safety, Dave, are you more comfortable with Lewis Seen in the second round or Nick Cross in the third round?
Probably Nick Cross in the third round. Only because, like, for me, I wouldn't want to necessarily jeopardize a contributor that you could get in the first or second round to take a safety when out of all the positions that the Bills have on this team, like that's the least likely position with Hyde and Poyer that you're going to see any meaningful playing time, right? you can justify like a defensive, like a Boogie Basham, right? Because you could see a path to him getting playing time with the way the Bills rotate on the defensive line. I don't see a path to playing time for a safety this year unless it's on special teams, right? Jaquan Johnson has barely played defense. Dean Marlowe played like 200 snaps 2 years ago, and that was like an insane amount of snaps for a backup safety on the Bills to play in a single season defensively. So for me, it would be Nick Cross. If the question is, Seen or Cross, Seen in the second, Cross in the third. I actually do like Nick Cross. I had made this comment before around the Maryland program, and like Darnell Savage is a good person to look back to and say, like, look, it's one guy, but Maryland isn't exactly a powerhouse for football, though we do have Stephon Diggs on the roster. So what am I going to say there? He was the fastest safety at the combine for whatever that's worth. And he did have a really high RAS score. It's like 9.9 or something like that. So he really does have a nice blend of speed and size. Didn't grade out necessarily well per PFF as far as like his actual grading. And SIS has him lower than some. He's only ranked their 19th best safety. So like there's not a lot of consensus, I guess, opinion on a guy like Cross, but that would be my pick if I had to choose.
How about you, Kendall? Lewis Seen in the second round or Nick Cross in the third round? That's based off of just the Buffalo Bills visits that we know of.
Opportunity cost wise, I'm picking Nick Cross, but I like Lewis Seen more as a player. Till I think you hit the nail on the head by talking about what you'd be giving up by taking Lewis Seen in the second. You give up the opportunity at one of those top 3 running backs. You give up the opportunity at an instant contributor, wide receiver, cornerback, linebacker, if they want to go that route, interior offensive line, whatever route they decide to take. You're giving up on a guy who could potentially contribute for this team on day one, the second he walks onto one Bills drive. So I think that's the biggest thing when you talk about drafting a safety. It's really, what are you going to get out of him year one? And I think you're right. You're going to get the most out of him with special teams stuff. And beyond that, you're going to have to find ways to use him like a chess piece on defense, like heavy dime packages or whatever you decide to do. You're going to have to get creative to find a way to make Lewis Seen a valuable first year player for you. But I like the player more. By chance in the chat, he says, I just wanted to point this out. He said that he doesn't like Lewis Seen because of how often he's missing tackles. If you like Nick Cross more than Lewis Seen, he had 6 more missed tackles this year. I think there's a similar style of play where they both play very heavy downhill styles. But Lewis Seen is actually much more reliable in terms of tackling than a Nick Cross is. I think Nick Cross has better athleticism, but it's by a hair. It's really by a hair. It's splitting hairs when you're talking about athleticism between those two. They're both super athletic players, and you're kind of looking to tap into that and get the most out of those two skill sets. But I think Nick Cross has the most to make up in terms of the football intelligence aspect to that more than Seen.
Maybe all these freaks will drop my boy Jalen Petrie to the third round.
Who knows? That age thing that you brought up is a good point too.
Yeah. It's I didn't think it would be. It had never really been a topic of conversation in previous years, and it's really been a big. I think the reason why it's a big topic of conversation this year is because of that COVID opt-out, right? Like everyone had a chance to go back. The age thing seems like it's a conversation more than it's ever been in years past, and obviously the Buffalo Bills have shown a history, at least the last couple of years, of taking early guys, like young guys with their early picks.
And Nick Cross is under 21 years old.
Yeah. So is Bryce Hall, by the way. Just saying that.
Yeah.
Just put that out there.
A lot of young guys out there.
Bryce Hall seemed like he was in college forever too, and he was under 20.
I know, right? Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. All right. Last position group, special teams, and I didn't even have a graphic in terms of words. I just have an image here of the punt god. And somebody said this on Twitter. I don't know if it was Otto. I don't know if it was the punt god himself. Somebody made this comment on Twitter saying it made so much sense to me. Obviously, that's Matt Araiza, the punter from San Diego State, punter number 1. A lot of the conversation on social media back and forth the last couple of days. What would you rather have, Matt Araiza in the 3rd or the 4th round, or Jordan Stout in the 6th round? I think most people would take would take Stout, but I actually shouldn't say a lot of people. I think most people would take Punk out of the third, but Ombre Love comes in and says, Matt Arise in the third, please and thank you. I think you have to take him in the third because the comment that was made on Twitter today made so much damn sense to me. I want to go place $100 bet on it, right? I don't know if you can place $100 bets on whose team will draft what in the third round, but who did the Rams cut this offseason?
Hecker, right?
Yep. Yeah, everyone just like, oh my God, the Rams cut Johnny Hecker. The Rams have a third round compensatory pick.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have 2 of them. I think the Rams are going to take Matt Ariza with one of their third round compensatory picks. It makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
If I could bet some money on that, I don't know what outlet will let me bet money on it, but I would feel pretty comfortable saying Matt Ariza comes off the board with that Rams pick. So I think if you want Matt Ariza, you got to take him at 89. Like that's going to be where you have to take him. I think I know where you guys stand. Would you take the punt god in the third round?
No.
We just spoke on opportunity cost at the safety position. I feel like we're both in the same boat on this.
I have them power ranked Ariza, Stout, Stonehouse, Camarda. That's my 4. Just give me one of them. I don't care who.
Yeah.
And make sure it comes the 6th rounder later.
Whoever's take one of them with, well, not one of them, but whoever's left with one of your 6th round picks. That's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So that should bring us now to the mock draft portion of our show. Dave's gonna bring up the simulator. Jessica, we just said I think he's gonna go in the third. I think he's gonna go with one of those comp picks in the third. So if Matt Ariza is sitting there in the 5th round, go for it. That's the earliest I would take Matt Ariza. If he's sitting there in the 5th round, I would go for it. And by chance says watched out be better than Ariza. I wouldn't be surprised. It's punter.
Yeah.
For all the scouting we do, it's freaking punter.
Right.
I remember a couple of years ago, I was obsessed with Michael Dixon out of Texas. Obsessed. I thought he was the greatest punter I've ever seen. I'm like, that guy's Ray Guy reincarnated. I was obsessed. And what has Michael Dixon done in his time in Seattle? Been an above average punter. Like,
right.
You definitely forgot he existed.
How are you going to separate yourself as a punter?
Who was the guy you really liked last year? Was it last year or the year before? Who was the guy you liked last year? He was from.
If you can name the college, I could probably tell you.
Didn't the Jets draft him?
Braden Mann, that was 2 years ago.
Braden Mann. I was big on the guy the 49. The guy the 49ers took. What's his name? He's got a really hard name to pronounce. Oh God, that guy the 49ers took a couple years ago in the 4th round, by the way.
Let me just.
I'm googling it. It was Mitch Wishnowsky, who's a really good punter. By the way.
Yeah, he's
really
actually doing really well. Yeah.
He was a guy I really liked, and he was a 4th round pick by the 49ers a couple of years ago. So,
all right,
yeah. If we're punting 6 times a game, I'll be. I say the rule is we have to trade out of the 1st round. What do you guys think?
You want to do like rule is trade down to trade up,
or we just have to trade back?
Just trade back and then
just trade back. We can trade back up if we want to. I say we have to trade back.
Okay.
I'm okay with it. I'm excited for our Monday show to figure out how we think this board is actually going to fall to us.
Oh yeah. Oh, trade up. 13 could have had. Could we have had Jameson?
Could have had.
We could have had Jameson. We could have had Jameson. Oh my God, Dotson 22.
Booth is dropping more and more on this simulator.
All right, so
it's
like what we're getting at
surgery, man.
Yeah.
All right, we got pick 25.
Obviously, McDuffie is the obvious answer on the board here, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's the obvious answer, but it's interesting whether the Bills would want McDuffie with as much as I doth protest. I don't know. Maybe the short arms might make the Bills not want him.
Kendall, how did McDuffie's arms compare to ASJ's from last year? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't, but I can look that up real quick.
Because
I'm sure it's nothing.
Height wise, I think they're both 5'11".
Did we pre-draft ASJ at all? Like, were we even interested, or was that all fan driven?
I think it might have been all fan driven.
I thought there was.
I don't know.
But in any case, my point is more about the player comparison, right? McDuffie's 5'11". Like, I think he's an outside guy that could play inside if he's
Byron Murphy. He's Byron Murphy of the Cardinals, like that other UW guy. Like everyone thought Byron Murphy was going to be a slot corner, and what has he been? He's been a very damn good
But I
boundary
think
corner in
that's
this
just
league.
how Washington develops their corners. They're just super
Mhm.
versatile in that way.
Yeah.
They can just do a little bit of everything. So Asante Samuel had 30 and 1/8 inch arms, and Trent McDuffie is 2/8 of an inch shorter. So 1/4 of an inch shorter arms than Asante Samuel Jr. It's pretty much the same.
So we're not drafting Trent McDuffie, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, apparently.
All right. What are the trade back options? They didn't look all that spicy.
Yeah,
Yeah, are we making our own?
I accidentally just got rid of them, so we're gonna have to make our own. The Lions are popular.
Have the Lions taken a cornerback?
The Lions
they took
Malik Willis.
Oh, they took Malik Willis. So they got their quarterback. Seattle at pick 40. Did they take a quarterback at 9?
They took Sauce Gardner.
All right. See if you can make an offer to Seattle. They want a quarterback. Maybe
you want to try to get both the 40 and 41 pick.
See what happens. Let's see what happens.
All right. Let's see what we can do here. We're doing our own.
I'm gonna check the trade value chart just for giggles.
There's that.
No.
Try their third. See if they'll offer their first, second, and third. Wow, they are just on. What about fourth?
Yes.
I don't like that as much though. That's not worth it to me. We might have to stay. The Bengals seem to always want to be a trade partner to move up to grab certain players.
Wait, the Bengals would take McDuffie. They would 100% take a corner.
Yeah.
Let's go back.
Let's offer the Bengals. See if the Bengals will offer us a fourth.
Yeah, but is the AI smart enough on this to even? Okay, let's see. Yes.
What about third? Before we
can maybe throw in one of our sixths and see if we can get their
throw in a sixth or a fifth.
Okay, we can throw in our second sixth and they'll take it.
A first and a sixth for a first and a third. Let's do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is good.
I'm not doing the math. Nope.
I think we're going to trade back again, too, once we get to 31 if we get an offer. Took Kenyon Green. Hey, they solidified that offensive line.
All right, we're getting offers here. The Browns are offering us pick 44 and pick 99 for this pick.
For just that pick.
Just that pick. And we've got the Falcons offering us 43 and 114. That's
so
shit.
Browns pick is better.
That's nothing. Yeah.
I'm intrigued with taking the Browns pick here.
I'm okay with that because then I'd be fine with taking any of the running backs on the board there or a cornerback on the board there.
Let's load up, baby. Let's do it. We're trading back again.
All right. Here we go.
They trade all that for Perry on Winfrey. Jesus.
What's the comment section?
Gordon.
What's the comment section thinking about our trade so far?
Most people are okay with the trades.
Do we do it again? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I think we got
start making money.
Whoa!
Up.
Look at that! Another second, the third to move back to 61.
We're not doing that.
No, let's see what's on the board. Quay Walker's on the board.
Quay Walker's on the board.
Bryce Hall's on the board.
We pick again at 57. Tyler Smith.
I mean, we got to take Bryce Hall here, right? No?
I would take Bryce Hall here. That would be my prerogative. But obviously, Sky Moore went 2 picks earlier. That stinks. But
it does
I would personally take Bryce Hall here. That would be my guy. And then we'd have Chad Muma at pick number 57, possibly. Or you could take Chad Muma here, with the thought being all running back will be there, like an Isaiah Spiller at pick 57. But everyone knows me. I'm team Bryce.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, we know our running back boards are different. But, I'm fine with Bryce here. My caveat is I would prefer to go running back, cornerback right now. Hope that.
It also depends on what corner is available. A 5th-round pick to move us up 7
spots.
See if they'll take our picks. See if they'll take our
consider this to go get McCreary, except he just
went off the board.
Yep.
Who's the top corner left? Cam Taylor Britt?
I'm not trading up for Taylor Britt in a second.
I'm not either. Quay Walker, like the linebackers are still there, but you probably can get one of them if you stay put.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd
Quay
be
Walker
content
would.
with sitting on Walker and Muma and hoping one falls at 57.
Yeah, I mean the you would trade up here probably if you really really wanted Quay, right? Like that
Yes,
would
if
be
the Bills loved him, that's a move that is feasible. Yes,
But I would actually pass here.
I would pass too because Muma is also on the board.
I would see if they would take a 6 instead.
And who would you take?
Yeah, that's the thing.
I would
Like, what's
take
the
Muma.
point? You would go for it just. To
I
get
would just
Muma.
ensure we get
Yeah.
Muma, but it says 7 picks. You can take Christian Harris or by chance.
I say we let it ride.
Let it ride. All right, let it ride.
Oh, Quay got picked by the Pats.
We
Oh
just
my
accidentally
God.
took Tyler Smith. No.
Why does it do that? All right. Well, we would have
that's tough.
taken. No, it's fine. We can.
Yeah.
We will say Muma was still on the board.
Yeah, we
so
were taking
Yeah.
Muma.
We would have taken Muma.
Okay, that's so stupid.
Trey
Why does it do
McBride's
that?
still on the board.
I don't
All right.
know why it does
For the
that.
record, we were taking Muma. All
Yeah.
right.
You know the font that TDN uses so we can fix our graphic when we post it on Twitter.
Third and the fourth, we can go up and get. We can go and get like Trey McBride here. Jalen Petrie, I think, is still on the board.
John Mechie,
Yeah,
Calvin Austin, Petit Frere.
I think wide receiver would be what I would want with my next pick here.
So what is our next pick actually?
It's probably still 89. No,
Still
89. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm making money moves to go and get a corner right now, but Taylor Britt's off the board. My
Maybe
next
Mark.
guys that I'd be targeting are Williams and Emerson. So
Yeah,
maybe not necessarily money moves to go get one. Guess I'd
not a third,
hold-
not a third and a fourth. Yeah,
Yeah, I'd be a little bit patient on those
Mhm.
corners, I guess.
I'd resume. I would turn it down. Oh, they just went with fifth. That was different. That was interesting.
Oh, was that different? Oh, that was
Yeah,
different.
unfortunately. Who? Their third and their fourth for our third. Oh, we have 2/3. That's a corner and receiver. I would decline that.
Yeah,
but
I think so. I think I'm declining this.
I'd say just ride it out, and I want to take a corner and I want to take a receiver at my next 2 picks.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I'm trying to make it so it doesn't skip us. It's so stupid.
Calvin Austin just went off the board. Brian Samoa, Brian Cook, Isaiah Spiller, Nick Benino, Monte
Can't believe
Taylor.
how
Ed
long
Ingram.
it took for the running backs to get selected.
All right.
Walker and Spiller were taken in the third round of this mock.
Third and a fourth and a sixth for a third, fourth.
Nah, we want
What
this.
How does that help us?
We get a 6th rounder. Nah, we're not doing this.
No.
All right.
All right, we're up.
Wow, we got 3 picks bunched together. I think we should go in whatever order: wide receiver, corner, and interior offensive line.
Me too.
Despite
That's where I
already
was going.
taking
Take
Tyler Smith.
take Martin Emerson here. Guarantee us Martin Emerson, I think. I would guarantee us Martin Emerson here, even though I like Jalen Armour Davis. There's a lot of receivers on the board I still like.
Same.
I think Emerson would be the pick
yeah.
for me too here.
I would take Emerson.
Wait,
I
who
know-
are the interior offensive linemen though? I didn't get to see that. Sorry.
Ooh, Jergy. Jergy's tempting.
I'd feel comfortable waiting.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's
D West
enough.
is still there.
Mm.
All
We'll see
right,
here.
let's go with Emerson. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with
Mhm.
that. Yeah, I'm also good on waiting on wide receiver because there were a lot of names there, like you said, Judge.
Yeah, that's not a realistic offer.
Sucks because we got a lot of picks still, and I kind of want to move up.
Yeah. Do we double dip at corner? There's some good ones there. Kobe Bryant, I think, has that safety flex. I know Kendall disagrees, but D'Angelo Malone. Oh, that's a luxury there you could take. Kyle Phillips is tempting, man.
Those
You know what?
top 4 wide receivers are all
Mhm.
tempting to me.
And
you could-
Wendell had that meeting with the Bills.
Yep.
Kyle Phillips has got return flex as well. I would take Kyle Phillips here. He's got the return flex. He would take Jamison Crowder's spot in the slot a year from now. I think he's a refined slot receiver, not an athlete slot receiver like an Isaiah McKenzie. He gives you a little bit of speed, even though he didn't test that way. He plays with
He
speed.
plays fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, Kyle Phillips is a young Danny Amendola. That's what he kind of reminds me of.
I like Kyle Phillips a lot, but I think I would go with Alec Pierce because I think he gives you more versatility. Yeah, the boundary start and the fact that he could be a power slot as well on top of that.
It's difficult.
I think that's very appealing, but
Right,
I like
so
Kyle Phillips a lot too. I actually think I have Kyle Phillips rated higher.
My vote is Kyle Phillips. Kendall's is Alec Pierce's.
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't taken we took a linebacker. We took Chad Muma.
Mm-hmm.
So Dave, do you want to break this tiebreaker here?
Good luck.
For the sake of, I like Kyle Phillips. For the sake of just doing things a little differently, let's go with Alec Pierce.
All right.
And then you also take Kyle Phillips at the next pick. No, just kidding. Hey, you get a boundary and you get a slot.
And you get a slot, yeah.
Tight end could be interesting. You know, Dulcich and K. Dotton just came off the board. I think Jeremy Ruckert's still there. Delaney was. I don't think that's realistic, but
what,
Jeremy
you think he's going to
Ruckert
be gone? You think someone's going to take a chance on that athleticism?
Yeah.
Ruckert
Ruckert and Bellinger would.
I don't think Alec Pierce would be here either, to be honest with you. But
yeah,
Ruckert's interesting here just because look at the interior offensive lineman and look how unless Juergens is still there.
Yeah, I'd be fine waiting on interior offensive line too. I think that's a good point. You don't necessarily want to take a chance on Lindstrom because he's below that archetype fit. And then there's kind of that grouping in the 4th, 5th round that makes a lot of sense.
Damari Mathis. Damari Mathis would be tempting here. The double dip
actually is very tempting.
So Damari Mathis or Jeremy Ruckert is my choice here.
Yeah, same. Make a pick so I can make one and we could put Tilt back on the fence.
All right, I'm gonna say Jeremy Ruckert.
That's who I was gonna say.
I was gonna say him too. So
all right, we're going with Ruckert then.
The Mathis double dip would have been fun.
Yeah, Mathis was tempting.
Yeah.
All right, so technically we have
a 7th round pick.
Do that.
We might still be able to get Mathis. I don't know who just went, but I don't know who's gone. Oh my god, I would do that. It's a 7th round pick. Give it up and get Damari Mathis. Well. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Why not? We're getting wild.
Just got to make sure we get an interior offensive lineman with our next pick. I think that's the key.
All right,
wow,
so
we're going
technically
nuts.
We've had Bryce Hall, Chad Muma, Martin Emerson, Alec Pierce, Jeremy Ruckert. We went defense heavy in this mock, which has not really been our MO.
I think the funny thing about this mock too is if that's actually Tyler Smith, this is still a really good mock.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Like a lot of people love Tyler Smith. Like I
haven't got to his tape yet. I've only seen one game of him at tackle, and it's not.
Joe loves Tyler Smith, and he loves him. Russ is obsessed.
Is he?
Right.
I mean, when you find a guy that plays with that kind of like finishers mentality, it's tough not to love him.
Oh, Lasitas, be there, Lasitas, be there, Lasitas.
He's there.
He's there. You gotta take Lasitas here.
Okay, Lasitas it is. Not even a question.
And if we would have taken Tyler Smith, DeMarco Jackson would have been sitting there for us at 1.
Exactly. That's why I was like, this actually wouldn't have even been that bad.
No, and we got another 5th rounder. This draft is nuts. I would double up on the offensive line here. I would think about it. Is a 6th round? I think this might be our last pick. We might take the punter here.
Yeah, click trade real quick, because then you can see if it's our last pick. Just click a random team and next, just to see how many picks we got.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, take the punter.
Take the punter.
Unless you want to pass on the punter, it's up to you guys.
Look, I'm not like we have to take a punter. Like that's not me. But I'm fine also doing it, right? Malcolm. Well, we have Muma already.
We already have a. What if we not that we could double dip at wide receiver? Like that's it.
See what's up.
That's probably the only thing I would say. But
Charleston Rambo, a guy we talked to.
I mean, we
took the outside guy.
I'd be absolutely fine with a punter here.
What position have we not taken yet? Go to.
I personally like Thomas Booker, but I don't think he's going to be there.
Noah Ellis is tempting.
I mean,
Gunter.
I don't know.
I like Gunter.
What about safety? Go to safety.
From McKinley.
I don't think any of those guys
are going to be there.
No.
Yeah,
Marquise Bell.
Thomas could be there because he played such a weird safety role in that defense. He's interesting too.
SIS has Bell as a top 10 safety.
Really?
Number
I
10.
should watch him then.
I like him. I like
Go,
him.
go to the, go just for shits. Go to the quarterbacks.
Do they have EJ Perry in here yet?
I
No.
think did they not? They don't have EJ Perry in there.
Caleb Ellaby's still on there.
No, they don't have EJ Perry in here.
Oh, that's weird.
It's stupid.
Double dip.
I would use a 6th round. I would use a draft pick on EJ Perry. I would.
I would go back to interior offensive line again.
Chris Paul. Wattenberg's there.
Ben Brown would be my guy, but tackle Ezzy. Oh, that's tempting. Obina Eze right there is tempting.
Big fan.
I'd probably go with Chris Paul or a punter.
I'm fine with that. Let's just go with a punter.
Yeah, we'll see the
Round it
BPA.
out.
The BPA, the best punter available.
All right. That was pretty good.
How many picks
like
was
it,
that?
so-
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
8.
6, 7, 8. Jeez. It's probably not very realistic if we ran the trade value chart, but I think there were some realistic trades involved with this.
Yeah, I mean, this is nuts. So you get your bona fide dynamic 3-down running back to start who could take some pressure off of Josh Allen. You get Chad Muma in the 2nd round because there was an error in the machine there. Chad Muma in the 2nd round, who is going to fill in that AJ Klein type of role. I'm going to have a seizure staring at this thing, by the way.
I know.
You got you got Muma sitting there in the 2nd round, fill that AJ Klein role in year 1, take over for Tremaine Edmonds in year 2. Martin Emerson is a guy who's going to come in and he's probably good enough to plug and play right away, opposite either Dane Jackson or Trey White. Probably good enough as a zone corner to make it work. You're probably going to bring in a veteran after the draft as well. Alec Pierce gives you some boundary flex, big slot flex like you have with Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis's doesn't ever hurt anybody. Jeremy Ruckert filling that OJ Howard role in year 2 and just a really good blocking guy in year 1 because it's going to take Ruckert time to develop because he was barely used at Ohio State. Damari Mathis, safety corner flex. And I mean, Damari Mathis could compete with Martin Emerson to be CB2.
Right.
And Mathis is a guy who you could slide in with Hamlin and you can have the 2 Pittsburgh guys back there at safety for Hyde and Poyer in the future. And then obviously Lacita Smith, someone the Bills are super high on, is a guy who could compete for that Roger Saffold role. And the best punter available could take Matt Hawk's job. So there is a clearly defined role, path to the roster, honestly path to a starting position for every single player drafted in this draft. So I guess that goes to show you the power of trading back in a draft like this.
Yeah.
I like
All
it.
right, gentlemen, that should just about do it for this evening. Again, I'm going to throw this graphic back up. We're 7 days away. So Monday is going to be our big final preview show. We're going to talk about all the round 1 options, all the players we think the Bills could take at 25. Do we trade up? Do we trade back? And then to close out the show, we're going to do a round 1 mock from pick 1 to pick 32. I'm going to come fully prepared with a list of everyone that every team in the NFL has met with. And it should be intriguing. We're going to try to make our best educated mock. We might even throw some trades in there and see who could actually be available to the Buffalo Bills at 25. If there's a guy who maybe slips, that could be a trade up candidate, or if the Bills want to trade back. So that'll be our Monday show. And then Thursday, it all begins. The Air Raid Hour is hosting the NFL draft here at Cover One on Thursday night, but we'll be joined by Anthony Romeo, Anthony Prohaska. Friday night, we'll be back as well, but Anthony Prohaska will be facilitating the night 2 coverage, and Anthony Romeo will be there as well as a couple of others. And then Saturday, Kevin Masseri, Anthony Romeo, and Dave, I believe you'll be there for a little bit as well. We'll be holding down the fort. So the Cover One Sports Network is going to have you covered from start to finish for the 2022 NFL Draft. This is the place to be. We even got boots on the ground. Eric Turner, Greg Tomsett, Aaron Quinn will be live from Vegas with a press pass. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to give those guys a press pass, but they did. So they will be boots on the ground there. So should be super interesting. Until next time, if you're listening on podcast form, please hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star and a review. If you're listening to this on demand, Make sure to smash that like and leave a comment in the comment section. We'll make sure we respond to you. And if you were listening live, we much appreciate it. And make sure you leave a like on your way out and share. Nothing more, nothing better than a good word to promote the show from people who enjoy it. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
I'm going to play this one time just because I feel like we're almost there. We're almost there. All right, go Bills.
Are we having fun yet?